Rain hammered Manhattan like broken glass. Kieran Vale sat motionless in the back of his armored SUV, watching a city that whispered his name in back rooms and boardrooms, but wouldn't recognize his face on the street. 37 years old, billionaire, untouchable, and completely alone. Every woman who'd ever touched him had calculated his net worth first, measured affection against bank statements, performed love like a transaction.
So Kieran made an insane choice. He erased himself completely, became Jace Mercer, a nobody stalking shelves in New Jersey, hunting for something he'd stopped believing existed, someone who could love a man instead of a fortune. Then he found Lena Hartwell, a woman the world overlooked and dismissed, running a failing literacy program with nothing but exhausted hope. She fell for the grocery clerk, not the empire. And now, standing in his penthouse after she discovered the truth,
Kieran faced the one thing his billions couldn't buy, her forgiveness. If you want to see how far a lie can travel before it destroys everything, stay with me until the end. Hit that like button and drop your city in the comments so I can see how far this story reaches across the world. Ding. The marble floor of Kieran Vale's penthouse stretched 40 feet in every direction, cold and white as bone. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed Manhattan like a postcard designed by architects who'd never felt poor. The furniture cost more than most people earned in 5 years. The art on the walls had been purchased at auctions where champagne flowed and nobody asked the price. Kieran stood at the window with a glass of scotch he hadn't touched, staring at the city lights bleeding through sheets of October rain. 37 years old, and he owned 18 buildings in this view, controlled shipping routes that moved 40 million in product monthly, had judges, politicians, and police captains on speed dial. Men crossed the street to avoid disappointing him. Women performed desire with the precision of method actors angling for their breakthrough role, and he was completely, devastatingly alone. His phone buzzed against the granite countertop. Another message from Vivian, the socialite he'd been photographed with last month at some charity gala neither of them cared about. She wanted dinner, wanted to be seen with him, wanted access to rooms where her last name alone wouldn't open doors. Kieran deleted it without reading past the first line. Behind him, Marcus Webb, head of security, former Marine, one of 3 people on Earth Kieran almost trusted, cleared his throat. "The car's ready when you are, sir. Council meeting starts at 10. "Cancel it?" Marcus didn't move. "Sir, these are the people who—" "I said cancel it." The silence that followed tasted like expensive scotch and accumulated regret. Marcus had worked for Kieran for 9 years, knew when to push and when to retreat. This was a retreat moment. "Understood." Kieran waited until the door clicked shut before he spoke to the empty room. "What's the point?" No answer came. Just rain against glass and the hum of a city that would devour itself before sunrise and rebuild by lunch. He'd spent 15 years constructing this life. The empire had been inherited. His father's network of hotels, legitimate businesses concealing streams of revenue that required lawyers instead of explanations. Kieran had expanded it ruthlessly, became the man people feared without ever seeing clearly, built wealth that insulated him from every human vulnerability except one: loneliness. Every relationship followed the same pattern. Initial attraction, chemistry that felt real until he noticed the calculations behind their eyes, the way they touched him differently after learning his net worth, how affection became performance once they understood what access to his world could mean. Vivian. Before her, Catherine. Before Catherine, a revolving door of beautiful, intelligent, strategically affectionate women who saw him as an acquisition instead of a person. 3 months ago, after another dinner where his date spent more time photographing the restaurant than looking at him, Kieran had driven home and sat in this exact spot until sunrise. And somewhere between the 3rd and 4th untouched drink, a dangerous thought crystallized. What if nobody could love him? Not because he was unlovable, but because they couldn't see past the money to discover whether anything real existed underneath. That's when the idea arrived. Insane, reckless, possibly the stupidest decision a man in his position could make. He would erase himself completely, become nobody, walk into the world without the armor of wealth, and discover if genuine connection still existed for a man like him. 2 weeks later, Jace Mercer signed a lease on a decaying apartment in Jersey City. The building smelled like mildew and decades of trapped cooking grease. The hallway carpet had stains that suggested crimes nobody reported. His apartment, a studio with a bathroom the size of a closet and a kitchen that barely qualified as a kitchenette, occupied the 3rd floor, accessible by stairs that groaned under his weight. Kieran stood in the center of the empty room, wearing jeans from a thrift store and a jacket that had cost $12 and felt something unexpected. Freedom. No security detail watching his perimeter, no encrypted phones routing through offshore servers, no marble floors that echoed with his isolation. Just a man, in a shitty apartment, invisible. He'd constructed the identity carefully. Jace Mercer had a social security number, employment history with gaps that suggested hard times, a bank account containing $800. No criminal record, no red flags. Just another person the world wouldn't notice unless he gave them reason. The job came easily. A graveyard shift stocking shelves at Save Mart, a failing grocery chain barely surviving against corporate competitors. The manager, an exhausted man named Phil, who smelled perpetually of instant coffee, had hired Jace after a 5-minute conversation that consisted mostly of, "Can you lift 40 pounds? And when can you start?" Kieran reported for his first shift at 11 p.m. on a Thursday. The fluorescent lights hummed like dying insects. The break room smelled like burnt popcorn and defeat. His coworkers, a rotating cast of people working second jobs, hiding from something, or simply trapped by circumstance, barely acknowledged him beyond necessary coordination. Perfect. For the first time in 15 years, people looked through him instead of at him. He stocked shelves, unloaded trucks, mopped floors, learned the specific rhythm of invisible labor performed while the world slept. His hands, accustomed to signing documents that moved millions, now arranged canned vegetables in alphabetical order and cleaned up spills in aisle 7. And slowly, Kieran started breathing differently. The tension he'd carried for years, the constant awareness of being watched, evaluated, calculated against, began dissolving. Nobody wanted anything from Jace Mercer except competent shelf stocking and punctuality. It felt like stepping out of a cage he'd been building around himself one gold bar at a time. 3 weeks into his new life, Kieran noticed her. October had turned vicious, the kind of cold that cut through cheap jackets and reminded you that winter was coming whether you could afford it or not. Kieran's shift ended at 7 a.m., right as the city started waking. He'd developed a routine, walk to the 24-hour laundromat 2 blocks from his apartment, buy a terrible sandwich from the bodega next door, sit on the concrete steps outside, and watch the world move. That morning, rain fell in sheets that turned the streets into moving rivers of trash and oil rainbows. Kieran sat under the laundromat's narrow awning, halfway through a sandwich that tasted like cardboard and regret, when he saw a woman struggling with 3 large boxes stacked precariously in her arms. She was maybe 30, shorter than average, heavier than the magazine covers and Instagram feeds that dictated acceptable bodies, wearing a cardigan that had seen better years and jeans that weren't trying to prove anything, dark hair pulled back in a ponytail, no makeup, moving with the careful determination of someone accustomed to the world offering no assistance. The top box started sliding. She caught it with her chin, adjusted her grip, kept walking. A man in an expensive raincoat walked past her without glancing in her direction. Then another. 3 more people flowed around her like water around a stone, their faces buried in phones, their awareness stopping at the edge of their personal convenience. The box slipped again. Kieran moved without thinking. He crossed the wet sidewalk in 4 strides, reached her just as the top box tumbled toward the concrete, caught it one-handed, steadied the stack. She froze, looked up at him with eyes that assessed threat level before anything else. "You look like you could use another set of hands," Kieran said, kept his voice level, non-threatening. The tone he'd practiced in the mirror until Jace Mercer sounded nothing like Kieran Vale. She studied him for 3 long seconds. Rain dripped from her ponytail. Her cardigan was soaked, but her eyes were clear and sharp and completely unimpressed by his presence. "I've got it," she said. "Not rude, just factual. I can see that. I'm heading that direction anyway." He nodded toward the community center half a block down, a building he'd noticed during his walks but never entered. "These boxes are going there, right?" Another pause, another evaluation. Then something shifted in her expression. Not trust exactly, more like calculated risk. "Fine, don't drop them." Kieran took the top 2 boxes. She adjusted her grip on the remaining one. They walked together through the rain without speaking. The community center looked like it was held together by optimism and expired building codes. The sign above the door read Bright Path Learning Center in faded letters. Through the windows, Kieran could see children's drawings taped to walls, mismatched furniture, and the particular type of organized chaos that suggested underfunded passion. The woman pulled out keys, unlocked the door, pushed it open with her hip. Kieran followed her inside. The interior smelled like old books and industrial cleaning solution. A rainbow-painted mural covered one wall, amateur but earnest, the kind of art that mattered more than it impressed. Shelves lined every available surface, packed with children's books in varying states of repair. "Just put them on that table," the woman said, nodding toward a folding table that had definitely seen better decades. Kieran set the boxes down carefully, turned to find her watching him with that same evaluating expression. "Thanks," she said, still not warm, but genuine. "Any time." He moved toward the door, stopped. Something made him turn back. What is this place? She was already unpacking books from the first box, picture books about animals and friendship and small everyday braveries. "Literacy program. We work with kids from the neighborhood, reading skills, homework help, that kind of thing." "You run it?" "Me and about 100 volunteers who show up when they can." She didn't look up from the books. "Why?" "Just curious." "Uh-huh." She finally met his eyes. "Look, if you're about to offer to volunteer, we do background checks. And if you're looking for community service hours because a judge told you to, we're full." Kieran almost smiled. "Neither. I was just helping with boxes." "Okay." She went back to unpacking, dismissed him without ceremony. Kieran stood there for another moment, aware he should leave, unable to identify exactly why he wasn't. "I'm Jace," he said finally. She glanced up, considered whether the conversation was worth having. "Lena." "Nice to meet you, Lena." "Sure." Not rude, not warm, just a woman with work to do and no time for performances. Kieran left before the silence became awkward. Outside, the rain had softened to a steady drizzle. He walked back to his apartment, climbed the groaning stairs, let himself into the space that smelled like industrial carpet and other people's cooking, and realized he couldn't stop thinking about the way Lena had looked at him. Not like a woman seeing a billionaire, not like someone calculating his net worth, just evaluating whether a stranger helping with boxes might be safe or dangerous. She hadn't seen Kieran Vale. She'd seen Jace Mercer. And for the first time in years, Kieran wanted someone to keep looking. He went back the next morning. Same routine, end of shift, terrible sandwich from the bodega. But instead of sitting on the laundromat steps, he walked to Bright Path. Through the windows, he could see children inside, maybe 20 of them, ranging from kindergarten age to middle school. Lena moved between them with practiced efficiency, answering questions, checking homework, radiating the specific type of exhausted patience that suggested she'd been doing this too long on too little sleep. Kieran watched for 10 minutes before he realized how creepy that looked. He was about to leave when Lena emerged from the building carrying a bag of trash toward the dumpster in the alley. She saw him immediately, stopped. "Are you lost?" "No." "Then what are you doing standing outside a children's literacy center at 7:30 in the morning?" Valid question. Kieran hadn't prepared an answer because he hadn't examined his own motivations closely enough to articulate them. "I was wondering if you needed help," he said finally. Lena shifted the trash bag to her other hand. "With what?" "Anything. I've got time before I need to sleep." "You work nights?" "Graveyard shift, grocery store." She processed that information with the same careful evaluation she'd used 2 days ago. "Why would you want to volunteer here?" "Why not?" "Because most people don't." She wasn't being bitter, just factual. "We're understaffed, underfunded, and operating out of a building that should have been condemned 5 years ago. The work is boring, the kids are loud, and we can't pay anybody." "I don't need money." Wrong thing to say. Her eyes sharpened immediately. "You don't need money, but you're stocking shelves at Save Mart?" Kieran course-corrected fast. "I mean, I'm not looking to get paid for volunteering. The grocery store pays my rent." The suspicion didn't completely disappear from her expression, but it softened slightly. "We do background checks," she said again. "You mentioned that. And reference checks." "Okay." "And if you're weird with the kids even once, you're gone. No second chances." "Understood." Lena studied him for another long moment. Rain dripped from the building's overhang. Somewhere down the alley, a truck beeped in reverse. "Fill out the application online," she said finally. "If you're serious." "I am." "We'll see." She walked past him toward the dumpster, hefted the bag over the edge without apparent effort, and headed back inside without another word. Kieran stood in the alley, rain soaking through his cheap jacket, and realized he was smiling. Not the calculated smile he used in boardrooms. A real one. Tupos. The background check came back clean because Kieran had paid people who specialized in making identities bulletproof. 2 weeks later, Lena sent him a terse email. "You're approved. Tuesday and Thursday afternoons, 3 to 6 p.m. Don't be late." Kieran showed up 15 minutes early on Tuesday. Brightpath looked different during operational hours. Children everywhere, sprawled on floor cushions with books, clustered around tables working on homework, arguing about chapter books with the passionate intensity of people who'd discovered reading recently enough to still find it magical. Lena stood near the back, helping a girl who couldn't have been older than 7 sound out words in a picture book about friendship. She glanced up when Kieran entered, nodded toward a table where 3 boys were supposedly doing math homework but actually drawing elaborate battle scenes. Work with them. Make sure they actually finish the assignment. Kieran crossed to the table, sat down. 3 pairs of eyes evaluated him immediately. "Who are you?" the oldest boy asked. Maybe 11, already developing the defensive posture of a kid who'd learned adults were unreliable. "Jace, I'm here to help." "We don't need help." "Cool, then show me you finished the worksheet." The boy's eyes narrowed. "What if we didn't?" "Then you're about to." A standoff developed, the kind Kieran had navigated in conference rooms with men twice his age. He waited, didn't push, just held the kid's gaze with patient inevitability. The boy broke first, slid the half-finished worksheet across the table. "It's stupid," he muttered. Kieran looked at the problems. Basic multiplication. "Why?" "Because when am I going to need to multiply things in real life?" "Fair question." Kieran considered his answer carefully. Every time you're trying to figure out if someone's lying to you about money, you'll need math. Every time you're counting something that matters, you'll need math. Every time you want to build something instead of just breaking things, you'll need math. The boy absorbed this. "You ever build anything?" "Yeah." "Like what?" Kieran thought about empires and shipping routes and corporate structures that moved millions. "Nothing as important as finishing homework so Miss Lena doesn't kick your ass." That earned him a small smile. They finished the worksheet together. Over the next 2 hours, Kieran rotated between groups, helped a girl practice reading aloud, explained fractions using pizza analogies, broke up an argument about whether dragons could be real with enough scientific evidence. It was exhausting. It was tedious. It was the most human he'd felt in years. When 6 o'clock arrived and parents started collecting children, Lena approached him while he was straightening books on the shelves. "You did okay," she said. High praise, apparently. "Thanks." Most volunteers quit after the first day. Kids are brutal when they smell uncertainty. "I noticed." She almost smiled. "You coming back Thursday?" "Yeah." "Okay." She started to walk away, stopped, turned back. "Why are you really doing this?" The question landed harder than it should have. Kieran looked at the children's drawings on the walls, the mismatched furniture held together with duct tape and determination, the woman standing in front of him who ran this entire operation on exhaustion and hope. "Because I needed to remember what mattering feels like," he said. Truth, stripped down and raw. Lena's expression shifted. Something in her eyes softened. Not trust yet, but recognition, like she understood that particular brand of emptiness. "Yeah," she said quietly. "I get that." Then she walked away before the moment could expand into something heavier. Kieran left Brightpath as the sun set, turning the Jersey City skyline into silhouettes in orange light, and realized he'd just told someone the truth for the first time in months. The pattern established itself over the following weeks. Kieran worked his graveyard shift at Save Mart, slept until mid-afternoon, showed up at Brightpath on Tuesdays and Thursdays, started finding excuses to come other days too, carrying supplies, fixing broken furniture, staying late to help Lena clean up. She never asked him to. But she stopped questioning why he kept appearing. They developed a rhythm, worked alongside each other in comfortable silence, occasionally shared coffee from the ancient machine in Brightpath's closet-sized kitchen, drinking from chipped mugs while comparing notes about which kids needed extra attention. Kieran learned the children's names, their stories, which ones lived in shelters, which ones had parents working 3 jobs, which ones arrived hungry and tried to hide it. And he watched Lena move through it all with exhausted grace. She worked impossible hours, survived on coffee and stubborn optimism, carried the emotional weight of 23 children who'd learned to depend on her. The world treated her like background noise. Kieran saw grocery store clerks ignore her when she asked questions, watched women in expensive athleisure laugh at something about her appearance while waiting in line at Starbucks, noticed how men's eyes slid past her like she didn't register as worth seeing. It made him furious. Not because Lena seemed bothered by it. She moved through casual cruelty with the practiced indifference of someone who'd stopped expecting different. But because Kieran recognized what everyone else missed. She was extraordinary. Not despite being overlooked, because the world's dismissal had refined her into someone who measured value differently. She didn't care about designer clothes or Instagram aesthetics or performing desirability for strangers. She cared about children learning to read, about creating safe space in an unsafe world, about showing up even when exhaustion suggested surrender. And somewhere between fixing broken shelves and helping kids with homework, Kieran fell in love. Not the performative attraction he'd experienced with socialites and models. Something quieter, deeper, more dangerous. He fell in love with the way Lena laughed when kids told terrible jokes, the stubborn set of her shoulders when facing impossible odds, the gentleness in her voice when reading to children who'd never been read to at home. He fell in love with someone who saw Jace Mercer and didn't calculate his net worth. And slowly, terrifyingly, Lena fell with him. It happened in small moments instead of grand gestures. Late November, after the children had gone home and they were cleaning up, Lena mentioned she was too tired to cook. Kieran suggested the Chinese place 2 blocks away. They ate dumplings on the steps outside Bright Path while the city turned dark around them, talking about nothing important until the food went cold. Early December, when a snowstorm hit and the heating system at Bright Path failed, Kieran showed up with portable heaters he'd borrowed from work. Lena knew he hadn't borrowed them. Didn't question it anyway. Mid-December, walking back from the bodega together after Bright Path closed, Lena slipped on ice-covered sidewalk. Kieran caught her before she hit the ground, his arm around her waist, her hand braced against his chest. They froze. The city disappeared around them. Lena looked up at him with eyes that saw past the cheap jacket and secondhand clothes, saw something real underneath, and Kieran realized the lie he was living had become impossible to survive. Because this, standing in the freezing dark with Lena against his chest, her breath visible in winter air, her warmth bleeding through his shirt, this was the only true thing he'd built in years, and it was constructed entirely on deception. The breaking point arrived 3 days before Christmas. Bright Path's annual holiday reading celebration, the one event where parents, volunteers, and supporters gathered to watch children read stories they'd learned over the past year. Lena had been preparing for weeks, decorated the community center with handmade paper snowflakes and string lights that barely worked, arranged folding chairs in rows, created programs printed on recycled paper. Kieran helped hang decorations, set up chairs, watched Lena transform the struggling center into something magical through sheer determination. The night of the celebration, parents filled the cramped space. Children stood proudly at the front, taking turns reading passages from books they'd conquered. Every kid who finished received applause that felt genuine instead of obligatory. Lena stood at the back, watching her students with an expression that cracked Kieran's chest open. Pride, exhaustion, love. Then Victor Hale walked in. Kieran knew the type immediately. Mid-50s, expensive suit worn like armor, the specific brand of smug confidence that came from wielding power over people with no recourse. Victor was the property manager who owned the building. Kieran had heard his name in passing, always accompanied by Lena's tension, the kind that suggested bad history. Victor walked to the front of the room in the middle of a child's reading, interrupted without apology. "Evening, folks. Sorry to crash the party." His smile was political. Empty. "I just wanted to let everyone know that Bright Path's lease expires January 15th, and unfortunately, we won't be renewing." Silence crashed through the room. Children stopped reading mid-sentence. Parents exchanged devastated looks. Lena went very, very still. "The building has new buyers," Victor continued, performing regret he absolutely didn't feel. "Prime real estate, you understand. Progress marches forward. I'm sure Lena here will find another location." He looked directly at her. His smile sharpened. "Maybe somewhere that better suits the aesthetic of the operation." The casual cruelty in his tone, the implication wrapped in politeness, made every parent in the room flinch. Lena's face went carefully blank, and Kieran felt something cold and terrifying rise inside him, the part of himself he'd buried under Jace Mercer's identity, the part that built empires and destroyed obstacles, the part that made men like Victor Hale cross streets to avoid disappointing him. He stood from his chair in the back row, didn't say anything, just looked at Victor with the full weight of who he actually was. Victor's smile faltered. For just a moment, recognition flickered in his eyes, not of Kieran's face, but of the type of danger he represented. Then Lena spoke. "Everyone, please." Her voice didn't shake. "Let's finish the celebration. The kids worked hard." Kieran sat back down, forced himself to breathe, watched Lena finish the event with professional grace while her entire world collapsed. After the last family left and they were alone in the empty community center, Lena stood among the paper snowflakes and dying string lights without moving. He's been threatening this for months, she said quietly. Wanted me to agree to certain accommodations in exchange for lease renewal. Every muscle in Kieran's body went rigid. What kind of accommodations? The kind I'd rather lose the center than agree to. The silence that followed tasted like violence barely contained.
Lena turned to look at him. Really look at him. You just went somewhere else, she said. What? Your eyes, the way you looked at Victor. For a second, you weren't the guy who stocked shelves at Save Mart. Her voice was careful, searching. Who are you actually? Kieran stood very still. The lie sat in his throat, familiar and easy. But looking at Lena, standing in the ruins of something she'd built with exhausted hope and stubborn love, he couldn't force it past his teeth. Someone who can help, he said instead. That's not an answer. I know. She studied him for a long time. The distance between them felt like miles instead of feet. I don't need a hero, Jace. I need the truth. Kieran opened his mouth, and the door to Bright Path slammed open. Victor Hale stood in the doorway, his expression twisted with something ugly and entitled. Lena, sweetheart, let's talk about this privately. He stepped inside, and Kieran moved between them before conscious thought caught up. She said no, he said quietly. Victor laughed. Who the fuck are you, the janitor? Leave. Something in Kieran's voice, the absolute certainty, the barely contained threat, made Victor's laughter die. You know what? Victor's eyes went cold. I'm going to make sure Bright Path not only loses this building, but never finds another location in this city. See how charitable you feel when these kids are learning to read on street corners. He left. The door slammed behind him. Lena stood frozen, her face very pale. What did you just do? She whispered. Kieran turned to face her and realized he'd just shown her exactly who he was. Not Jace Mercer, the harmless grocery clerk. Kieran Vale, the man who made problems disappear. The silence stretched between them like a wire pulled too tight. I need to go, Lena said finally. Her voice was shaking. I need to think. Lena, please don't. She grabbed her bag, walked past him without meeting his eyes, left Kieran standing alone in the empty community center surrounded by paper snowflakes and the wreckage of whatever trust they'd been building. Outside, the temperature had dropped below freezing. Kieran stood on the steps and watched Lena disappear into the December dark, and knew that everything was about to change. Kieran didn't sleep. He sat in his decaying Jersey City apartment as the temperature dropped and frost formed on the inside of the windows. The radiator clanked and wheezed, but produced no actual heat. His phone, the encrypted one that connected him to his real life, sat on the chipped countertop, silent and accusatory. One call. That's all it would take. One call to Marcus and Victor Hale would disappear. Not literally. Kieran didn't operate that way anymore, hadn't for years. But disappear in the ways that mattered. His business licenses revoked, his property seized for code violations, his reputation shredded by investigative journalists who owed Kieran favors. He could protect Lena, protect Bright Path, solve everything, and prove he was exactly the kind of man she shouldn't trust. Outside, garbage trucks rumbled through pre-dawn streets. Kieran watched the numbers on his cheap alarm clock tick towards 6 a.m. His shift at Save Mart started in 5 hours. The idea of stocking shelves while his entire carefully constructed experiment collapsed felt absurd. But quitting would raise questions, break the pattern, expose cracks in Jace Mercer's identity. So at 10:30, he put on his work uniform and walked to Save Mart through cold that turned his breath to visible clouds. Phil was already there, drinking coffee that smelled like burnt desperation. You look like shit, Phil said. Bad night. Join the club. We got a truck coming at midnight. Gonna need you on the loading dock. Fine. Kieran moved through his shift on autopilot. Unloaded boxes, stocked shelves, cleaned spills. The mundane labor usually quieted his mind, but tonight every task felt like moving through thick water. Around 3 a.m., during his break, he pulled out his phone. No messages from Lena. He typed out a text, deleted it, typed another, deleted that too. What could he possibly say that wouldn't make everything worse? He was still staring at the blank message screen when his encrypted phone buzzed in his other pocket. Marcus. Kieran stepped into the stockroom before answering. It's 4 a.m, Kieran said. We have a problem. Marcus's voice was tight, controlled, which meant the problem was serious. Adrian Chen's people have been asking questions. Adrian Chen, one of the 3 major players in the city's underground economy.
Technically, a competitor. Practically someone Kieran had an understanding with. Stay out of each other's territories. Don't fuck with each other's operations. What kind of questions? About you. Where you've been. Why you've gone dark.
Kieran's grip on the phone tightened. And what did you tell them? Nothing, but they're not buying it. Chen thinks you're planning something. A move against his supply routes, maybe. He's getting nervous. Tell him I'm taking a sabbatical. I did. He thinks that's code for planning his destruction. Marcus paused. Sir, you need to come back. Make an appearance. Shake some hands. Before this escalates into something that can't be walked back.
Kieran closed his eyes. How much time do I have? A week, maybe 2. Then Chen starts making defensive moves, and when he moves, everyone moves. The whole ecosystem destabilizes. I'll handle it. When? I said I'll handle it. Another pause. Longer this time. Are you okay? Marcus asked. The question landed wrong. Marcus never asked personal questions. Their relationship existed in professional parameters, security, logistics, threat assessment, not emotional welfare. Why wouldn't I be? Because you've been playing grocery clerk for 2 months and now you sound like someone standing on a ledge. Kieran almost laughed. I'm fine. Sir, I'll call you in 48 hours. He hung up before Marcus could push further. Stood in the stockroom surrounded by boxes of cereal and institutional-sized containers of mayonnaise, feeling the walls of both his lives closing in. Heats. Lena didn't come to Brightpath on Thursday. Kieran arrived at his usual time, 3 p.m., 15 minutes early, carrying coffee he'd picked up from the bodega. Through the windows, he could see children inside, working with volunteers he recognized. But no Lena. He pushed through the door. A woman named Sandra, one of the regular afternoon helpers, a retired teacher with grandchildren in the program, looked up from helping a girl with fractions. Jace, didn't expect you today. Is Lena here? Sandra's expression shifted, became careful. She called in sick. Is she okay? She sounded tired, said she needed a day. Kieran stood very still, aware that everyone in the room was watching him now. Kids, volunteers, all of them measuring his reaction. Okay, he said, kept his voice level. I'll just help out like normal. Actually, Sandra stood, crossed to him with the deliberate approach of someone about to deliver bad news. She lowered her voice. Maybe you should give her some space today. What? She called me this morning, asked me to take the lead this week, said she needed to figure some things out. The subtext was clear. Lena was avoiding him. Did she say anything else? Just that things were complicated right now. Sandra's eyes were kind but firm. Look, I don't know what happened between you two, but Lena's been running this place on fumes for 3 years. Whatever's going on, she needs time to process without additional pressure. Kieran wanted to argue, wanted to explain that time was a luxury they didn't have, that Victor Hale was out there planning Brightpath's destruction, and Lena didn't understand the resources Kieran could deploy to stop him. But explaining that would require confessing everything. Okay, he said instead. Tell her I hope she feels better. He left before Sandra could see the frustration tightening his jaw. Outside, the December afternoon had turned gray and bitter. Kieran walked without direction, hands shoved in his jacket pockets, breath clouding in front of him. His phone buzzed, the regular one, a text from an unknown number. We need to talk. Tomorrow, 2 p.m. Giuseppe's on Mott Street. Come alone. VH. Victor Hale. Kieran stared at the message for 30 seconds before replying, Fine. Giuseppe's was the kind of Italian restaurant that pretended to be authentic, but mostly served overpriced pasta to tourists. Kieran arrived at 1:50, scanned the interior through the front window. Victor sat in a back booth, already halfway through a glass of wine. Kieran pushed through the door. The hostess started to greet him, but Victor waved her off. He's with me. Kieran slid into the booth across from him. Didn't take off his jacket. Didn't order anything. Victor studied him with the assessing look of someone trying to solve a puzzle. You're an interesting guy, Jace Mercer. What do you want? Direct. I like that. Victor sipped his wine. Here's the thing. After our little confrontation the other night, I got curious. Started asking around about you. Know what I found? Kieran said nothing. Not much. You appeared in Jersey City 2 months ago like a ghost. No employment history before SaveMart. No previous addresses. No social media footprint. For a grocery clerk in his 30s, that's fucking weird. Some people value privacy. Sure. Or some people are hiding something. Victor leaned forward. So I'm wondering, what's a guy with no past doing playing guardian angel to a failing literacy program? I volunteer. That's not a crime. No, but interfering with my business could be. Victor's smile was sharp. See? I've got plans for that building, real plans. And Lena's little charity operation is in the way. I tried being nice, tried giving her options. She chose poorly. Kieran felt the familiar cold settling into his chest, the part of him that calculated consequences and deployed violence with surgical precision. What do you want? He asked again. I want you to convince Lena to accept my very generous lease renewal offer. She gets to keep Bright Path. I get certain considerations. Everyone wins. She already said no, because she doesn't understand how bad things can get. But you, Victor pointed at him with his wine glass. You look like someone who understands consequences. So here's the deal. You convince her to be reasonable, or I make sure that building becomes completely uninhabitable before the lease expires. Plumbing problems, electrical fires, gas leaks. Shit happens in old buildings. The threat was clear, unambiguous. Kieran looked at Victor Hale, this small, predatory man who wielded power over people with no recourse, and felt something crystallize inside him. He was done pretending. No, Kieran said quietly. Victor blinked. Excuse me? You're not touching that building. You're not touching Lena. You're going to disappear from her life completely. Victor laughed, genuine amusement. Or what? You'll stalk me to death with canned vegetables?
Kieran leaned forward. When he spoke, his voice was utterly calm. I'm going to give you one chance to walk away. Sell the building to someone else. Take your loss. Move on. Because if you push this, I will systematically dismantle every aspect of your life until there's nothing left but debt and federal investigations. The laughter died in Victor's throat. For the first time, he looked uncertain. Who the fuck are you? Kieran stood, dropped 2 20s on the table. Someone you don't want to find out about. He walked out of Giuseppe's into the freezing afternoon. Behind him, Victor sat very still, his wine forgotten. Oh shit. That night, Kieran made the call he'd been avoiding. Marcus answered on the first ring. Sir, I need a full workup on Victor Hale, property manager, mid-50s, operates mostly in Jersey City. I want everything, financial records, property holdings, business associates, legal issues, personal dirt, everything. Silence on the other end. Then, is this connected to, just do it, 24 hours. Understood. Kieran hung up, sat in his apartment staring at the frost-covered windows. He'd just deployed the machinery of his real world. No going back now. Lena finally texted him Saturday morning. Can we talk? Tonight, 8 p.m., my place. I'll send the address. Kieran stared at the message for a full minute before responding. I'll be there. The address came through 10 minutes later. An apartment building in a neighborhood that sat somewhere between struggling and surviving. Kieran arrived at 7:50, stood outside for 8 minutes, then climbed the stairs to the 3rd floor. Lena answered on the first knock. She looked exhausted, hair pulled back, wearing sweatpants and an oversized cardigan, no makeup, eyes that had clearly spent time crying. Come in. Her apartment was small but carefully maintained, books everywhere. Children's drawings taped to the refrigerator. A couch that had seen better years but was clean and covered with a handmade quilt. Kieran stood awkwardly near the door. Lena gestured to the couch. Sit. He sat. She stayed standing, arms crossed. The distance between them felt calculated. I've been thinking about Tuesday night, she said. About the way you looked at Victor, the way you moved, the things you said. She paused. That wasn't the first time you've threatened someone, was it? No point lying now. No. So who are you actually? Kieran took a breath. This was it. The moment where everything collapsed or somehow, impossibly, held together. My real name is Kieran Vale. Lena's expression didn't change. The name clearly meant nothing to her. I'm not a grocery clerk, he continued. I run a business empire worth about $4 billion. Hotels, shipping, real estate. Some of it's legitimate. Some of it operates in gray areas. I have people who handle problems. I have lawyers on retainer. I have enough money that I stopped counting years ago. The silence that followed was devastating. Lena sat down slowly in the chair across from him. Not on the couch. Maximum distance while staying in the same room. Why are you telling me this? Because you asked. Because I'm done lying to you. You've been lying this whole time. Her voice was very quiet, very controlled. The apartment, the job, the thrift store clothes. All of it was fake. The identity was fake. What I felt wasn't How the fuck would I know the difference? Now emotion cracked through. Anger. Hurt. You turned me into an experiment. You wanted to see if someone would love you without knowing about your money, so you played dress up and manipulated me into caring about someone who doesn't exist. That's not what happened. Then what happened, Kieran? She spat his real name like a curse. Explain to me how this isn't the most disgusting, entitled thing a rich person has ever done. Kieran felt the accusation land like physical blows. Because she wasn't wrong, not entirely. I was alone, he said. Every relationship I'd had ended the same way. People who wanted access to my money or my power. Nobody who saw me. So I thought if I removed all of that, if I became someone with nothing, maybe I could find something real. So you lied. Yes. You manipulated me. Yes. You let me fall in love with a character you were performing. Jace Mercer was never a character. Kieran leaned forward. Everything I did at Bright Path was real. Helping those kids. Spending time with you. Those conversations on the steps. That night you slipped on the ice and I caught you. His voice broke. None of that was performance. That was me. The real me. More real than I've been in 15 years. Lena's eyes were bright with tears she refused to let fall. You should have told me. When? After the first week? Hi, I'm actually a billionaire running an experiment. You would have thrown me out. So instead you waited until I was completely invested, until I trusted you, until I... She stopped, swallowed hard. Do you have any idea how humiliating this is? I never meant to humiliate you. But you did. The tears finally spilled over. You made me feel like I mattered to someone. Like someone saw past all the shit the world throws at me and actually cared. And now I find out it was all part of some rich asshole's social experiment. It wasn't an experiment. Not after the first week. Not after I actually met you. I don't believe you. The words hit harder than anything else she could have said. Kieran sat back, felt the distance between them expanding into something that might be permanent. What about Victor? Lena asked. Were you planning to swoop in and save Brightpath? Play hero while I'm so grateful I overlooked the lying? No. I was planning to handle Victor without you knowing. Handle him how? Kieran hesitated. Tell me, Lena demanded. I was going to destroy him, financially, legally. Make him radioactive in every business circle that matters. Force him to sell the building for pennies and disappear. Jesus Christ, Lena stood, paced to the window. You were going to ruin someone's life and not even tell me? I was going to protect you. I didn't ask for your protection. I didn't ask for any of this. She spun to face him. You know what the worst part is? Part of me wants to let you do it. Part of me wants to use your money and your power to save Brightpath. And I hate myself for even thinking that. Then let me help. No. Lena. No. Her voice was steel. I won't be another person using you for what you can provide. I won't prove you right about people only wanting your money. And I won't let you buy your way into my forgiveness. Kieran stood. So what do you want? I want you to leave. For how long? I don't know. She wrapped her arms around herself. I need to figure out what was real and what was you controlling the situation. I need to decide if I can ever trust you again. And I can't do that with you here. Kieran moved toward the door, stopped with his hand on the knob. For what it's worth, I love you. The real you. Not some version I imagined. You're the first person in years who made me feel human instead of useful. Lena's expression crumpled. Don't. It's true. I said don't. Her voice broke. Just go, please. Kieran left. The door closed behind him with a soft click that sounded like an ending. But. Sunday morning, Marcus delivered the Victor Hale file. Kieran sat in his Jersey City apartment reading through financial records, property holdings, and a pattern of harassment complaints that had been settled with NDAs and cash payments. Victor Hale was exactly what Kieran expected. A predator who weaponized power against people with no resources to fight back. The phone rang. Marcus. Did you read it? Yeah. So what do you want to do? Kieran looked at the documents spread across his cheap kitchen table. Evidence of tax evasion. Proof of building code violations that endangered tenants. Testimony from women Victor had harassed. A pattern of criminal negligence that would bury him if it reached the right prosecutors. One phone call. That's all it would take. Nothing, Kieran said. Marcus was quiet for 3 seconds. Sir? I'm not touching it. But you said, I know what I said. I'm not doing it. May I ask why?
Because Lena was right. Because protecting her without her consent was just another form of control. Because proving his love by deploying the machinery of his wealth would only confirm her worst fears. Because it's not my fight, Kieran said. Respectfully, sir, you made it your fight when you threatened him at the restaurant. Kieran closed his eyes. Yeah, I fucked up. So what now? Now I wait. For what? For her to decide if I'm worth forgiving. Marcus absorbed this. When he spoke again, his voice was gentler. And if she decides you're not? Kieran looked around his decaying apartment, at the life he'd built trying to escape himself, at the experiment that had turned into the most real thing he'd experienced in years. Then I learned to live with it. Victor Hale struck on Monday. Kieran was at Save Mart halfway through his shift when his phone buzzed with a news alert. Community center condemned after emergency inspection. His blood went cold. He opened the article, read it standing in the middle of aisle 6 while industrial music played overhead. Brightpath's building had been condemned following an emergency city inspection that discovered critical safety violations. Gas leaks, structural damage, electrical hazards that presented immediate danger. The center would be closed effective immediately. All programs suspended indefinitely pending repairs that the article estimated would cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. The landlord, Victor Hale, expressed deep concern for the children's safety and pledged to investigate how such dangerous conditions had gone unnoticed. Kieran read the article 3 times. Every word was carefully crafted bullshit. Victor had created those violations, paid inspectors to find them, manufactured the emergency, exactly like he'd threatened. Kieran's hands were shaking. He pulled out his phone, started to call Marcus, stopped. This was the test, the real one. Save Lena using his power, prove she was right about him controlling everything. Or step back. Let her fight her own battle, respect her boundaries even while watching her world collapse. He stood frozen in the grocery aisle, the phone heavy in his hand. Then he dialed. Not Marcus. Lena. She answered on the 4th ring. Her voice was wrecked. I can't talk right now. I saw the news. Yeah, Victor moved fast. She laughed, but it sounded like breaking glass. I should have known he would. Lena, I have to go. I'm trying to find temporary space for the kids, somewhere, anywhere, before parents panic and pull them out of the program completely. Let me help. I told you no. Just listen. I can't do this, Kieran. I can't talk to you while my entire life is falling apart. I can't. She hung up. Kieran stood in the fluorescent-lit grocery store, surrounded by products nobody needed, and felt something fundamental break inside him. He'd played this perfectly wrong from the beginning. Thought he could control the variables. Thought he could test for authenticity while keeping himself safe behind layers of deception. Thought he could step into Lena's world without consequences. But love didn't work that way. Trust didn't work that way. And now Lena was losing everything while he stood paralyzed by the terrible choice between respecting her boundaries and using his power to save her. His phone rang again. Marcus. I saw the news about the community center. Yeah. This is Victor Hale's response to your threat. He's escalating. I know. Sir, with respect, you need to handle this before it gets worse. She told me not to. She told you not to help? She told me to stay out of it. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. And you're going to listen? Kieran looked at the phone in his hand, at the power it represented, the resources he could deploy with a single call. Yeah, he said quietly. I am. Even if it means watching her lose everything? Even then. Another silence, longer this time. You really love her, Marcus said. Not a question. Yeah. Then you're fucked either way. Help her, and she'll hate you for controlling the situation. Don't help, and she loses everything anyway. I know. So what are you going to do? Kieran closed his eyes and realized there was a third option, one that didn't involve deploying his resources, one that didn't violate Lena's boundaries, one that required him to be honest for the first time in months. I'm going to tell her the truth, he said, all of it, and then let her decide what happens next. That's a gamble. Everything with her has been a gamble. Fair enough. Marcus paused. For what it's worth, sir, I hope it works out. Thanks. Kieran hung up. Finished his shift on autopilot. And when he walked out of Save Mart into the freezing December night, he pulled out his phone and typed a text to Lena. I know you don't want to see me. I know I fucked everything up. But I have information about Victor that you need to see. Not money, not solutions, Just information. You can decide what to do with it. Please, give me 1 hour. He hit send. Watched the message deliver. Waited. 3 minutes passed. 5, 10. His phone buzzed. Tomorrow, 7 p.m. Bright path. 1 hour. Then you leave me alone. Kieran stared at the message. Tomorrow night, he would walk into that condemned building. Tell Lena everything, show her the evidence against Victor, and hand her the power to make her own choice. No control, no manipulation, just truth. And the terrifying possibility that truth wouldn't be enough. He typed back, I'll be there. The wind cut through his cheap jacket as he walked home through streets that didn't know his name. Tomorrow night, everything would change, one way or another. Kieran arrived at Brightpath 20 minutes early. The building looked worse in daylight. Yellow condemned notices plastered across the front door. Police tape stretched across the entrance. Windows dark. The cheerful mural of children reading books now felt like a memorial to something dead.
He stood across the street, hands buried in his jacket pockets, watching the December wind scatter trash against the building's foundation. His breath came out in white clouds. The folder Marcus had compiled sat heavy in his messenger bag, every piece of evidence against Victor Hale organized and documented. Financial crimes, building violations, harassment complaints, a pattern of predatory behavior spanning 15 years. Kieran had read through it 3 times last night, memorizing details, preparing arguments. Now none of that preparation felt adequate. At 6:50, a figure approached from the opposite direction. Lena. She wore the same worn cardigan, jeans, boots that had seen too many winters. Her face was drawn, exhausted, the kind of tired that sleep wouldn't fix. She saw him, didn't wave, just pulled keys from her bag and walked to the side entrance, the one without police tape. Kieran crossed the street. Thanks for coming, he said. Lena unlocked the door without looking at him. 1 hour. That's what I promised. Inside, the building felt like a tomb. The heat had been shut off. Their breath was visible. Someone had removed most of the children's artwork from the walls, leaving behind tape residue and nail holes. The bookshelves stood empty. Folding chairs were stacked in corners. Brightpath had been gutted in 48 hours. Lena walked to the center of the main room, stood there with her arms crossed, not quite facing him. So talk. Kieran set his bag down, pulled out the folder. I had someone look into Victor Hale. I need you to see what we found. We? My head of security, Marcus Webb. He's good at finding things people try to hide. Lena's jaw tightened. You sent someone to investigate Victor? Yes. Without asking me? Yes. Even after I told you I didn't want your help. Kieran took a breath. I know you said that, but I also know Victor threatened you, and I couldn't just stand by while he destroyed this place. So you decided to control the situation anyway. I decided to give you information. What you do with it is completely your choice. Lena stared at him for a long moment. Then she held out her hand. Kieran gave her the folder. She opened it, started reading. Her expression didn't change as she moved through pages of financial records, building code violations, legal settlements. But her hands gripped the papers tighter with each page. When she finished, she closed the folder carefully, set it on one of the empty bookshelves. This is enough to bury him, she said quietly. Yeah. Tax evasion, tenant harassment, falsified inspection reports. He's been doing this for years. To dozens of properties, dozens of tenants. Lena looked at the folder like it was a weapon she didn't know how to use. If this gets to the right people, prosecutors, investigative journalists, Victor loses everything. Yes. And you just handed it to me. It's yours. Do whatever you want with it. She turned to face him fully for the first time since entering the building. Why? Because you were right about all of it. I've been controlling situations my whole life, manipulating variables, using money and power to solve problems without asking if people wanted my solutions. I did it to you. I'm done doing it. So this is you stepping back? This is me being honest. I have resources that could destroy Victor, but they're not mine to deploy. Not anymore. This is your fight, your choice. Lena's eyes searched his face, looking for the lie, the angle, the manipulation. What do you get out of this? She asked. Nothing. Maybe you use this information and save Brightpath. Maybe you decide it's not worth the fight. Either way, I walk out of here and leave you alone. Like you asked. You'd really do that? Just walk away? Kieran felt something crack inside his chest. I don't want to, but yeah, if that's what you need, I will. The silence that followed was broken only by wind rattling the condemned building's windows. Lena picked up the folder again.
opened it, stared at Victor's financial records like they were written in a language she was still learning to read. "I've never destroyed anyone before," she said quietly. "I know. I've spent my whole life trying to build things, help people. She gestured at the folder. "This is the opposite of that. It's also justice." "Is it? Or is it revenge dressed up in legal language?" Kieran moved closer. Not close enough to crowd her, just close enough that she could see his face clearly. "Victor Hale has been preying on people for 15 years, people without resources to fight back. He harassed you, threatened you, manufactured a crisis to condemn this building, and he's done it to dozens of others who couldn't stop him. Stopping him now isn't revenge. It's making sure he can't hurt anyone else." Lena's hands were shaking. "I don't know if I can do this." "Then don't. Give me back the folder. I'll make it disappear. You walk away. Start over somewhere else." "That's not what I mean." She looked up at him. "I mean, I don't know if I can become someone who destroys people, even people who deserve it." "You're not destroying him. You're holding him accountable." Sounds like a distinction without a difference. It's not. Destruction is what Victor did to you, attacking someone who never hurt him because he could. Accountability is what you'd be doing to Victor, stopping someone who's been hurting people for years. Lena closed her eyes, took a shaky breath. When she opened them again, something had shifted. "If I do this, I need to understand something first." "Okay, this information you gave me. This came from your world, the billionaire world, the world where you can just decide someone needs to be investigated, and it happens." "Yes. So even now, even while you're pretending to step back, you're still using your power. You're just doing it at one remove." The observation hit like a physical blow, because she was absolutely right. Kieran had told himself he was respecting her boundaries, giving her choice, but he'd still deployed Marcus, still used his resources, still controlled the situation, just more subtly. "You're right," he said. "I'm sorry. Stop apologizing. I am tired of your apologies." Lena's voice was sharp, raw. "I want to know who you actually are. Not Jace Mercer, not the guy playing dress-up as a grocery clerk. Kieran Vale, the person who built an empire, who has people who investigate his enemies, who can destroy someone with a phone call." "I don't know how to answer that." "Try." Kieran looked around the gutted community center, at the empty shelves where children's books used to live, at the space where kids had learned to read, while the world told them they didn't matter. "I inherited my father's business when I was 22, he said. Hotels, mostly, but also shipping networks, real estate, connections to people who operated outside legal boundaries. I spent 15 years expanding it, making it more powerful, more profitable. I learned to read people, identify weaknesses, apply pressure until I got what I needed. You became good at it. I became excellent at it. I could walk into a room and know within 5 minutes who could be bought, who could be intimidated, who needed to be eliminated. I stopped seeing people as people. They were assets or obstacles. And the women you dated? Were they obstacles? They were tests, auditions. I'd watch them perform affection while calculating my net worth. And every time I'd feel more isolated, more convinced that genuine connection was impossible for someone like me." Lena's expression was unreadable. "So you created Jace Mercer." "So I created an experiment, a way to test if love could exist without the corruption of wealth. And I was your test subject. You were supposed to be. For about a week. Then I actually met you, actually saw how you moved through a world that constantly diminished you without letting it break you. Actually felt something real for the first time in years." "Real," Lena repeated. "You keep using that word like it means something." "It does mean something. Not to me, not anymore." She set the folder down. "You want to know what's real to me? This building. Those kids. The 3 years I spent building something that mattered. That's real. What you and I had? I don't even know what to call it." "It was real," Kieran said. "Everything at Bright Path, every conversation, the night you slipped on the ice. That was real." "Was it? Or was it Kieran Vale playing the role of someone who cared?" "I wasn't playing a role." "Then what were you doing?" The question hung between them like a challenge. Kieran searched for the right answer, the true answer, the one that would make her understand. "I was trying to be someone worth loving," he said finally. Lena's face crumpled. For just a moment, the anger dissolved into something more painful. "God damn you," she whispered. "You can't say things like that." "It's true. I don't care if it's true. I care that you lied to me for months. I care that every memory I have of us is contaminated by the fact that you were performing an experiment." "I wasn't." The door behind them slammed open. Both of them spun.
Victor Hale stood in the entrance, flanked by two men in expensive suits. Not muscle. Lawyers, probably. The kind who made problems disappear with NDAs and settlement agreements. Victor's eyes swept the room, landed on the folder sitting on the bookshelf. His expression went very cold. "Well," he said, "isn't this cozy?" Kieran moved instinctively, positioning himself between Victor and Lena. Victor noticed. Smiled. "Still playing protector, Jace? Or should I call you Kieran Vale?" The name landed like a detonation. Lena's sharp intake of breath was audible. Kieran's entire body went rigid. Victor's smile widened. "Oh, she didn't know you were using your real name now. How awkward." "Get out," Kieran said quietly. "I don't think so. See, I've been doing some research of my own. Had a friend in the DA's office look into you after our little chat at Giuseppe's. And you know what I found?" Victor pulled out his phone, started reading. Kieran Vale, 37, CEO of Vale Consolidated Holdings. Estimated net worth $4.3 billion. Controls hotels, shipping, real estate across 8 states. Known associate of Adrian Chen, Marcus Webb, and about a dozen other people who operate in very gray legal areas. Well, he looked up from the phone. So imagine my surprise when I discover that the guy threatening me in an Italian restaurant is actually one of the most dangerous businessmen on the East Coast. Lena was staring at Kieran. Her face had gone completely pale. "$4 billion?" she said. Kieran couldn't look at her. "Lena, you told me you were rich. You didn't mention you were worth $4 billion. The number doesn't matter." "Doesn't matter?" Her voice was rising. "You're not just wealthy. You're not just successful. You're—" She couldn't finish the sentence. Victor was enjoying this. "Here's the thing, Kieran. I know exactly who you are now. And I know you can't touch me without exposing yourself. One call to the right people, and your whole operation comes under federal scrutiny. Tax evasion, money laundering, racketeering. I'm sure there's plenty to find if investigators start digging." "You're bluffing," Kieran said. "Try me. Make one move against me and I'll burn your empire to the ground. I've got nothing to lose. You've got everything to lose." The calculation was clear. Victor had done his homework, understood the leverage. And he was right. Kieran could destroy him. But doing so would require exposing parts of his business that couldn't survive daylight. Connections to people like Adrian Chen. Transactions that skirted legal boundaries. The machinery of wealth that operated best in shadows. Victor turned to Lena. "As for you, sweetheart, I'm willing to be generous. I'll let you reopen Bright Path in a different location. I'll even give you first month's rent free. All you have to do is hand over whatever dirt you think you've got on me, and we forget this whole misunderstanding." Lena looked at the folder, at Victor, at Kieran. Her face was unreadable. "And if I say no?" she asked. Victor's smile disappeared. "Then I make sure you never run another program in this city. I've got friends in the education department, social services, building inspections. I'll bury you in red tape until you give up." "You can't do that." "Watch me. I've been doing it for 15 years. Lena picked up the folder, held it against her chest. Kieran's heart was hammering. She was going to hand it over, going to surrender because Victor had outmaneuvered them both. Then Lena looked directly at Victor. "No," she said. Victor blinked. "What?" "I said no. I'm not giving you anything. I'm taking this evidence to every prosecutor, every journalist, every city official who'll listen, and I'm going to make sure everyone knows exactly what you've been doing." Victor's face darkened. "You're making a mistake." "Probably, but it's my mistake to make." "I will destroy you." "You already did. You condemned my building, shut down my program, scattered 23 kids who depended on me. You can't threaten me with something you already took." The silence that followed was electric. Victor looked at Kieran. "You put her up to this." "No," Lena said before Kieran could respond. "He didn't. This is me choosing to fight back. For the first time in my life, I'm choosing to fight." Victor's expression went flat, dangerous. "Fine, have it your way, but you should know something before you make this official." He pulled a document from his jacket, unfolded it. "I've got 23 families who signed statements saying Bright Path operated in unsafe conditions, exposed their children to hazardous environments, failed basic safety protocols." Lena went very still. "That's a lie." "Is it? Or did you prioritize your program over your responsibility to keep those kids safe?" Victor held up the document. "These parents are willing to testify that you knew about the building's problems and ignored them, that you put their children at risk. I didn't know about any problems until your fake inspection. That's your story, but I've got 23 parents who'll say otherwise, parents who are scared, who need someone to blame,
who I've convinced that you're the reason their kids lost their safe space. The document shook in Victor's hand, not from nerves, but from the force of his grip. You manipulated them, Lena said. I gave them the truth, from a certain perspective. They trusted me. They trusted you until I showed them why they shouldn't. Funny how that works. Victor's smile returned. So here's your choice, Lena. Walk away quietly, and I make this disappear. Those parents go back to thinking you're a hero, or fight me, and I turn every family against you. I'll make sure your reputation is so toxic that no child's parent will ever trust you again. Lena's hands were shaking. You can't do that. I already did. Those signatures are real. Those statements are notarized. One call to the local news, and you become the woman who endangered children for her own ego. Kieran stepped forward. Victor, shut the fuck up. This isn't your fight anymore. Victor kept his eyes on Lena. So what's it going to be? Your pride or your reputation? Lena looked at the folder in her hands, then at the document Victor held. The choice was impossible. Expose Victor and destroy her own reputation. Make it impossible to ever work with children again, or surrender and let a predator continue hurting people. Kieran watched her face cycle through emotions, saw the exact moment the fight drained out of her. She held out the folder. Take it, she said quietly. Lena, don't, Kieran started. Take it, she repeated, louder this time. I'm done. Victor plucked the folder from her hands, flipped through it quickly, satisfied himself that everything was there. Smart choice. He tucked it inside his jacket. I'll have my lawyers draft the separation agreement. You'll sign a statement absolving me of any wrongdoing, and we'll never speak again. He turned to leave, stopped at the door. Oh, and Kieran, stay the fuck away from my properties. Next time you threaten me, I won't be so understanding. The door slammed behind him and his lawyers. The silence that followed felt like suffocation. Lena stood motionless in the center of the gutted community center, staring at her empty hands. I'm sorry, Kieran said. She didn't respond. Lena, I'm sorry. You should have what? She turned to face him. Her eyes were completely empty. Destroyed him for me? Used your $4 billion to make the problem disappear? Proved that I can't survive in this world without a billionaire savior? That's not what I meant. Then what did you mean? Kieran had no answer. You know what the worst part is? Lena's voice was eerily calm. You were right. You can't have a real relationship, not because people only want your money, but because you can't stop trying to control everything. You can't trust people to make their own choices. You can't let anything happen that you haven't orchestrated. I gave you the folder. I stepped back. No, you didn't. You deployed your security team. You gathered evidence. You created the exact conditions you wanted and then pretended you were giving me a choice. That's not stepping back. That's just controlling things more subtly. The accusation landed because it was true. Kieran had told himself he was respecting her agency, but he'd still manipulated the situation, still used his resources, still tried to engineer the outcome he wanted. I don't know how to do this differently, he admitted. I know. That's the problem. Lena walked to the door. I need you to leave now. Lena, please, just go. I can't look at you anymore. Kieran stood in the empty community center for another moment, searching for words that would fix this, but there were no words. He'd lost her. Not because he didn't love her, because he didn't know how to love anyone without trying to control them. He walked to the door, stopped with his hand on the frame. For what it's worth, I meant everything I said. About you being real, about you mattering, about... Stop. Lena's voice broke. Just stop. Kieran left. Outside, the December evening had turned bitter, temperature dropping fast, wind that cut through clothes and found skin. He walked without destination, pulled out his phone, stared at Marcus's number. One call. That's all it would take. One call and Marcus would deploy the machinery. Destroy Victor. Save Lena whether she wanted saving or not. Kieran's thumb hovered over the screen. Then he put the phone away. He'd already lost Lena by trying to control her life. Doing it again wouldn't change anything except proving her right. 3 days later, the news broke. Kieran was back in his real apartment, the Manhattan penthouse with marble floors and city views. He'd abandoned the Jersey City experiment, packed up Jace Mercer's clothes and donated them, erased that identity as thoroughly as he'd created it. He sat at his desk with a glass of scotch, reading the article on his tablet. Beloved community director faces child endangerment allegations. The story was exactly what Victor had promised. 23 parents claiming Lena had operated BrightPath in unsafe conditions, quotes about gas leaks and structural damage that she'd allegedly ignored, implications that she'd prioritized her program over children's safety. Lena's name was being destroyed in real time. The comment section was vicious. People who'd never met her calling her irresponsible, negligent, selfish. The truth, that Victor had manufactured the crisis, was nowhere in the article. Kieran read it twice. Then he picked up his phone. Marcus answered immediately. Sir, I need you to leak the Victor Hale file. Every page, every document. Send it to investigative journalists, prosecutors, anyone who'll listen. Silence on the other end. Sir, if we do that, Victor will follow through on his threat. He'll expose parts of your operation that can't survive scrutiny. I know. The federal investigation alone could cost you billions, possibly put you in prison. I know. So you're willing to destroy yourself to save her? Kieran looked out at Manhattan, at the empire he'd built, the wealth that had insulated him from every human vulnerability except loneliness. I'm willing to do the right thing, he said. Finally. She'll never know you did this. Good. That's not why I'm doing it. Marcus absorbed this. When he spoke again, his voice was careful. Permission to speak freely, sir? Always. This is the stupidest thing you've ever done. Yeah, probably. And also maybe the most decent. Kieran almost smiled. Get it done, Marcus. Tonight. Understood. He hung up, sat in his penthouse surrounded by luxury that suddenly felt like a mausoleum, and waited for the consequences. The story exploded within 48 hours. Multiple news outlets simultaneously published exposés on Victor Hale, financial crimes, building violations, harassment, a pattern of predatory behavior spanning 15 years. The evidence was overwhelming, undeniable. Within a week, Victor was arrested. His properties were seized. Federal prosecutors announced investigations into tax evasion and fraud. And just as Victor had promised, he burned everything on his way down. Anonymous tips reached federal investigators about Kieran's business connections, transactions that existed in legal gray areas, associations with people like Adrian Chen who operated outside traditional boundaries. The investigation launched immediately. Kieran's lawyers told him to expect years of legal battles, billions in fines, possibly prison time. He didn't care. For the first time in his life, he'd done something without calculating the personal benefit. He'd protected someone without demanding credit. He'd acted with genuine selflessness. It felt like drowning and breathing at the same time. So, Lena saw the news about Victor's arrest while sitting in a coffee shop, scrolling through her phone with hands that still shook every time she thought about those 23 families turning against her. She read the article 3 times. Every piece of evidence she'd handed to Victor, evidence that was supposed to be destroyed, had somehow reached journalists and prosecutors. Someone had leaked it. The article mentioned an anonymous source with access to detailed financial records and internal documents. Lena knew exactly who that source was. She sat very still in the coffee shop, coffee going cold in her hands. Kieran had done it anyway. Despite her telling him to stay out of it, despite losing her, he deployed his resources and destroyed Victor Hale. And according to the follow-up article she found, he'd destroyed himself in the process. Federal investigation, legal troubles, his empire under scrutiny. He'd sacrificed everything. For her. Without asking for credit. Without demanding forgiveness. Without any guarantee it would change anything between them. Lena's phone buzzed. A text from Sandra, the volunteer from BrightPath. Did you see the news about Victor? Several families are calling. They want to apologize. They want BrightPath to reopen. Are you okay? Lena stared at the message. Then at the article about Kieran's legal troubles. Then at her own reflection in the coffee shop window. And realized she had no idea how to feel about any of it. The man who'd lied to her for months had just destroyed his empire to save her reputation. The man who'd controlled every situation had finally let go of control. And it had cost him everything. The man she'd loved as Jace Mercer had proven that Kieran Vale was capable of genuine sacrifice. And she didn't know if that made things better or worse. She picked up her phone, started to call him, stopped. What would she even say? Thank you for ruining your life? I'm still angry, but also grateful. I don't know if I can ever trust you, but you just proved yourself trustworthy. There were no words adequate for this moment. Lena put her phone away, finished her cold coffee, and walked out into a world that had shifted beneath her feet while she wasn't looking. Somewhere in Manhattan, Kieran Vale was facing the consequences of choosing her over his empire, and Lena Hartwell was trying to figure out if sacrifice could erase deception. Or if some betrayals were too fundamental to forgive? The answer felt impossibly far away. Kieran sat in a federal interrogation room that smelled like industrial cleaner and accumulated desperation. The walls were the color of old teeth. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead with a frequency designed to make people confess to crimes they didn't commit. Across the metal table, two FBI agents reviewed documents in matching folders. Agent Rivera, mid-40s, expensive suit, the kind of calm that came from years of watching people lie, tapped a pen against the table's edge. Agent Chen, younger, sharper, hungry for a career-defining case, stared at Kieran like he was trying to see through skin to the crimes underneath. "Let's go over this again," Rivera said. "You're telling us you had no knowledge of the illegal transactions flowing through Vail Consolidated shipping routes." "That's correct." "But you're the CEO. I employ people to manage operations. I can't oversee every transaction personally." Rivera smiled. Not friendly. Just professional acknowledgement of a well-practiced lie. "Mr. Vail, we've been building this case for 18 months. We have documentation of 47 separate instances where your company facilitated money laundering. We have testimony from 3 of your associates who are willing to cooperate in exchange for reduced sentences. We have financial records showing you personally approved expenditures that can only be explained as payment for illegal services." Kieran said nothing. "You're looking at 15 to 20 years, Chen added. "Maybe more if we can prove racketeering. Your empire is over. Your wealth will be seized. Your reputation destroyed." He leaned forward. "But if you cooperate, we can negotiate. Give us Adrian Chen. Give us the others. Help us dismantle the network. And maybe you see daylight before you're 60. The offer hung in the air between them. Kieran had been expecting this. Had wargamed the scenario with 6 different lawyers. Knew exactly what cooperating would mean. Betraying everyone who'd ever worked with him. Destroying the ecosystem of trust that made his world function. Becoming the kind of man who saved himself by sacrificing others. "No," he said. Rivera raised an eyebrow. "No? I'm not cooperating." "You understand what you're facing?" "Yeah. And you're willing to go to prison for 20 years rather than help us." "I'm willing to accept the consequences of my choices." The 2 agents exchanged glances. "You're protecting people who would sell you out in a heartbeat," Chen said. "Maybe. That's not my problem." Rivera closed his folder. "You're either the most loyal person I've ever met, or the stupidest." "Probably both. This is about a woman, isn't it?" Chen's voice shifted, became almost sympathetic. "We saw the news, the community center, Victor Hale. You destroyed your empire to save her reputation. Classic white knight syndrome." Kieran's jaw tightened. "This conversation is over. Mr. Vail, either charge me or let me go. I'm done talking without my lawyer present." Rivera stood, buttoned his jacket. "We'll be in touch. Enjoy your freedom while it lasts." They left. Kieran sat alone in the interrogation room, listening to the fluorescent lights hum. His phone buzzed in his pocket. Text from Marcus. "Adrian Chen wants a meeting. Tonight. Says it's urgent." Kieran closed his eyes. Of course Adrian wanted a meeting. The federal investigation was making everyone nervous. People were calculating survival probabilities, deciding whether Kieran was an asset or a liability. He typed back. "Where?" "The warehouse. Pier 47. Midnight." Kieran checked his watch. 6 hours. He stood, walked out of the federal building into late afternoon light that felt too bright after the interrogation room's artificial glare. His phone rang. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer, but something made him pick up. "Yeah? It's me." Lena's voice hit him like a physical blow. He stopped walking. Middle of the sidewalk. People flowed around him like water around stone. "Lena, I saw the news about the federal investigation." "Yeah, they're saying you could go to prison." "Yeah." Silence on the other end. Not empty. Full of things neither of them knew how to say. "Why did you do it?" she asked finally. "Why did you leak the Victor Hale files when you knew it would destroy you?" Kieran looked at the Manhattan skyline, at the empire he'd built, and was watching collapse in real time. Because it was the right thing to do. "That's not an answer. It's the only answer I have." "Kieran," her voice cracked, "you sacrificed everything. For me. After I told you to stay away, after I said I didn't want your help, you did it anyway." "I had to." "Why?" "Because you were right. About all of it. I've spent my entire life controlling situations, manipulating outcomes, using power to solve problems without considering what people actually wanted. I did it to you. I did it to everyone. And it made me into someone who couldn't have a real relationship because I couldn't stop trying to engineer every interaction. He took a breath, kept going.
So I made a choice. For once in my life, I made a choice that wasn't about control or self-preservation or strategic advantage. I did something because it was right, even if it cost me everything, even if you never forgave me, even if I went to prison knowing you hated me. The silence that followed was devastating. I don't hate you, Lena said quietly. You should.
I know, but I don't. A pause. I'm still angry. I'm still hurt. I don't know if I can ever trust you again, but I don't hate you. Kieran felt something crack inside his chest. That's more than I deserve. Yeah, it is. Her voice steadied. The families are apologizing. They want Bright Path to reopen. They're raising money for a new location. It's actually happening. That's good. It's because of you. Because you destroyed Victor. Because you exposed what he'd been doing. Another pause. Thank you. The words felt impossible, like oxygen in a vacuum. You don't need to thank me, Kieran said. I know. I'm doing it anyway. Lena, I have to go. I just wanted you to know that what you did mattered, that it helped, that... She stopped, started again. That maybe you're not the person I thought you were. She hung up before he could respond. Kieran stood on the Manhattan sidewalk holding a phone that was no longer connected to anything, and for the first time in weeks he felt something that might have been hope. Pier 47 at midnight looked like a location designed for betrayals. The warehouse squatted at the edge of the Hudson River, rusted metal and broken windows. Containers stacked like a child's blocks. Security lights throwing harsh shadows across concrete. Kieran arrived alone, as requested. Parked his car 3 blocks away. Walked the rest of the distance with his hands in his jacket pockets and his awareness tuned to every sound. Marcus had wanted to come. Kieran had refused. If this was an ambush, having his head of security present would only make it worse. The warehouse door was unlocked. Inside, the space was cavernous, empty except for a few scattered crates and the 2 men waiting in the center under a single hanging work light. Adrian Chen stood with the posture of someone who'd never been afraid of violence because he'd mastered it young. Mid-40s. Expensive casual wear that somehow looked more dangerous than a suit. 2 bodyguards flanking him at precise distances. Next to Adrian stood someone Kieran hadn't expected. Marcus Webb. Kieran's steps slowed. His eyes moved between his head of security and Adrian Chen. Marcus? Sir. Marcus's voice was level, professional, but something in his eyes was apologetic.
What's going on? Adrian smiled. Not friendly, just amused. Kieran, good to see you. Though I have to say you look like shit. Federal investigation wearing on you? Kieran ignored him, kept his attention on Marcus. Why are you here? Because I asked him to be, Adrian said. Marcus and I go back, way back, before he started working for you. I needed to have a conversation with you, and I thought having a familiar face present might keep things civil. The setup was clear now. This wasn't a friendly meeting. This was an intervention, or a threat, or both. Say what you need to say, Kieran told Adrian. You're a problem. Adrian's smile disappeared. Your federal investigation is making my people nervous. When the FBI starts digging into Vail Consolidated, they're going to find connections to my operations. Shared vendors, mutual associates, financial transactions that look suspicious when examined by federal prosecutors. I'm not cooperating with them. I know. Marcus told me. That's the only reason you're still breathing. Adrian moved closer. But here's the issue. You're radioactive now. Everything you touch becomes evidence. Everyone you associate with becomes a target, which means I need to distance myself from you completely. Fine. Consider us distanced. It's not that simple. We have ongoing arrangements, commitments, agreements that can't just be dissolved without consequences. What kind of consequences? Adrian glanced at Marcus. Some silent communication passed between them. Then Marcus spoke. Sir, Adrian is concerned that if you go to prison, you might reconsider your decision not to cooperate. That the reality of 20 years might change your perspective. Understanding crashed through Kieran like cold water. They thought he'd flip, thought he'd trade information for a reduced sentence. I told the FBI no, Kieran said. Today you told them no, Adrian corrected. Tomorrow? Next week? 6 months into a 20-year sentence? People change their minds when they're facing real time. I won't. You say that now, but I've seen stronger men than you break. I've watched people swear loyalty right up until the prosecutor offers them a deal that sounds better than dying in prison. Adrian's eyes were cold, calculating. So I need insurance. What kind of insurance?
Adrian pulled out his phone, tapped the screen, held it up. The photo showed Lena, walking out of a coffee shop, date stamped from this morning. Every muscle in Kieran's body went rigid. Don't, he said quietly. I'm not threatening her, yet. Adrian lowered the phone. But if you cooperate with the FBI, if you give them anything that leads back to me, she becomes a problem I have to solve. Not because I want to, because I have to protect my interests. The threat was clear, unambiguous.
Kieran felt the familiar cold settling into his chest, the part of him that calculated violence, that understood exactly what Adrian was saying and what it would mean. You touch her, and I will destroy everything you've built, Kieran said. His voice was utterly calm. I will spend every resource I have left making sure you die screaming.
Adrian laughed. With what resources? Your empire is collapsing. Your accounts are frozen. You're about to be indicted on federal charges. You have no power left. I have enough. Do you? Adrian stepped closer. Because from where I'm standing, you're a desperate man who sacrificed everything for a woman who won't even forgive you. You destroyed your empire, exposed yourself to federal prosecution, made yourself vulnerable, all for someone who told you to leave her alone. The words landed because they were true. Kieran had given up his power, his protection, his ability to defend the people he cared about, and now Adrian was exploiting that vulnerability. Here's the deal, Adrian said. You go to prison quietly. Don't cooperate. Don't make deals. Serve your time like a professional. And Lena Hartwell lives her life completely untouched. Bright Path reopens. She helps her kids. She never even knows this conversation happened. And if I refuse? Then I make sure she understands exactly what kind of man you really are, what you've done, who you've hurt, the blood on your hands from 15 years of operating in my world. I'll destroy her image of you so completely that she'll spend the rest of her life grateful you're in prison. Kieran's hands were shaking. Rage, fear, helplessness. He looked at Marcus. You're okay with this? Marcus's expression was carefully neutral. Sir, Adrian is being reasonable. He's offering you a way to protect her, to make sure she's safe. All you have to do is what you were already planning, accept the consequences without cooperating. That's not what this is. This is extortion. This is survival, Adrian corrected. For both of us. You keep quiet, everyone wins. You talk, everyone loses. Simple math. Kieran wanted to lunge across the space between them, wanted to put his hands around Adrian's throat and squeeze until the threat disappeared. But the warehouse was full of Adrian's people. Kieran was alone. And violence would only prove Adrian's point, that Kieran was desperate and dangerous and unstable. I need time to think, Kieran said. You have 24 hours. Then I need an answer. Adrian gestured to his bodyguards. Marcus will be in touch. They left. The warehouse door clanged shut behind them. Kieran stood alone in the empty space, listening to his heartbeat thunder in his ears. Marcus remained, standing in the shadows beyond the work light. You've been working with Adrian this whole time, Kieran said. Not the whole time, but longer than you knew. Marcus stepped into the light. He recruited me 3 years ago, asked me to keep tabs on you, report on your activities, make sure you didn't become a problem for his operations. And you agreed. I'm a mercenary, sir. I've always been clear about that. I work for whoever pays the best rate. I paid you. You did. Very well. But Adrian offered something more valuable than money. Marcus paused. Job security. When you went to prison, and we both knew it was a matter of when, not if, I'd need employment. Adrian guaranteed that. Kieran felt something fundamental break inside him. Marcus had been the one person he almost trusted, the one constant in a world of variables, and it had been a lie the entire time. Did you leak information to the FBI? Kieran asked. No, that investigation was legitimate. Federal prosecutors have been building the case independently. I just made sure Adrian knew it was coming. So you betrayed me. I prioritized my survival. Same thing you've been doing your whole life. Marcus's voice was matter of fact. You taught me that, sir. Always have an exit strategy. Never trust anyone completely. Protect yourself first. I trusted you. I know. That was your mistake. Marcus moved toward the door. For what it's worth, I do respect what you did for her. Sacrificing your empire, going to prison. That took balls. But it also made you weak. And in our world, weakness gets you killed. He left. Kieran stood alone in the warehouse with the sound of the river lapping against the pier outside. Everything he'd built had collapsed. His empire, his freedom, his trust. And now the one person he cared about was being used as leverage against him. He pulled out his phone, stared at Lena's contact information. One call. He could warn her, tell her what Adrian had threatened, get her somewhere safe. But doing that would make her a target, would prove to Adrian that Kieran couldn't be controlled, would guarantee the exact outcome he was trying to prevent. The only way to protect Lena was to stay silent, accept prison, disappear from her life completely, and hope that Adrian kept his word. Kieran's phone rang. Unknown number again. He answered. Yeah? Mr. Vale, this is Agent Rivera. We need to speak with you immediately. New evidence has come to light that requires your response. What kind of evidence? The kind that suggests you're not just facing money laundering charges. We have testimony placing you at a meeting where a murder was discussed. Victor Hale's murder. Kieran's blood went cold. I had nothing to do with Victor Hale's death. Victor Hale isn't dead, Mr. Vale. Yet. But we have a witness who claims you solicited his murder 3 days ago, that you offered payment to have him killed before he could testify against you. That's a lie. Then you need to come in and explain that, now, or we issue a warrant for your arrest. The setup was obvious. Someone, Adrian probably, had manufactured evidence, created a witness, escalated the charges to force Kieran into an impossible position, cooperate and betray everyone, or stay silent and face murder-for-hire charges on top of everything else. I'll be there in an hour, Kieran said. He hung up, stood in the empty warehouse, and realized he'd run out of moves. Every choice led to the same destination: prison, isolation, and Lena living her life without ever knowing the full truth. His phone buzzed, text from a blocked number. The FBI interview is a trap. Don't go. Meet me at the address below. I can help. L. An address in Brooklyn followed. Kieran stared at the message. L. Lena. But it couldn't be. She didn't have access to information about FBI interviews, didn't operate in this world, wouldn't know he was walking into a trap, which meant either the message was fake, a different trap, maybe Adrian testing his loyalty, or Lena had somehow gotten involved in something way over her head. Either way, going to that address was insane. Kieran checked the time. 45 minutes until he was supposed to be at the FBI office. He could go to the interview, face whatever fabricated charges they'd constructed, start the legal battle that would consume years. Or he could go to the Brooklyn address, find out who sent the message, make one last desperate play before everything collapsed completely. The smart choice was obvious: the FBI, lawyers, due process. But Kieran had stopped making smart choices the moment he created Jace Mercer. He got in his car, drove toward Brooklyn, and hoped this wasn't the mistake that cost Lena everything. The address led to a storage facility in Red Hook, industrial neighborhood, shipping containers, and auto shops, streets that emptied out after dark. Kieran parked 2 blocks away, approached on foot, every instinct screaming that this was an ambush. The storage unit was in the back. Number 347. The door was unlocked. He pushed it open slowly. Inside, a single battery-powered lantern illuminated a space about 10 feet square. Metal shelves lined the walls, boxes stacked everywhere. And sitting on a folding chair in the center, holding the lantern, was Lena. Kieran froze. "Close the door," she said. He did. Moved closer slowly. "How did you—" "Marcus Webb called me this afternoon, told me everything. The meeting with Adrian Chen, the threats against me, the FBI trap, all of it." "Marcus called you?" "He said he couldn't watch you walk into this alone, that he'd betrayed you enough." Lena's voice was steady. "He gave me this address. Told me to get you here before you went to the FBI." Kieran tried to process this. Marcus had set up the meeting with Adrian, had revealed his betrayal, and then had contacted Lena to warn Kieran? None of it made sense. "Where's Marcus now?" he asked. "I don't know. He said to tell you he was sorry, that he'd spent 3 years being a mercenary and one afternoon remembering what loyalty felt like." She stood. "Kieran, the FBI interview is a setup. Adrian Chen manufactured a witness who's going to testify you tried to hire them to kill Victor Hale. If you go to that interview, they'll arrest you on murder-for-hire charges. Even your lawyers won't be able to fight it." "I know." "So why were you going?" "Because every other option was worse." Lena stepped closer, close enough that he could see tears shining in her eyes under the lantern light. "Marcus told me about Adrian's threat, about using me as leverage, about forcing you to go to prison quietly or he'd hurt me. You shouldn't be here. If Adrian finds out, fuck Adrian Chen." Her voice was fierce.
I'm not hiding, I'm not running, and I'm not letting you sacrifice yourself to protect me. Lena, no, listen to me. She grabbed his jacket, pulled him closer. You've been trying to control everything since the moment we met. Creating Jace Mercer, gathering evidence on Victor, trying to solve my problems without asking if I wanted them solved. And it was wrong, all of it. I know. But then you did something different. You leaked those files knowing it would destroy you. You chose to do the right thing even when it cost you everything. That wasn't control. That was sacrifice. Tears were streaming down her face now. So I'm not letting you make another sacrifice alone. We're doing this together. We're going to find a way to stop Adrian, to clear your name, to survive this without you spending 20 years in prison. Kieran felt his own eyes burning. There is no way. Adrian has all the leverage. The FBI has manufactured evidence. My empire is collapsing. I have nothing left to fight with. You have me. Lena's voice was steady, certain. You have me, and I'm not walking away. Not this time. You should. I lied to you, manipulated you, turned you into an experiment. I know. I'm still angry about it. I probably will be for a long time. She didn't let go of his jacket. But I also know that you changed, that the man standing in front of me isn't the same person who created Jace Mercer. You learned how to love someone without trying to control them. And that matters. It might not be enough. Then we'll figure it out together. Kieran looked at her. At this woman the world had spent years overlooking, who'd built something meaningful from nothing, who'd refused to let cruelty make her cruel, who was choosing to stand beside him even after everything. I don't know how to do this, he admitted. Do what? Let someone help me. Trust someone completely. Stop trying to solve everything alone. Then learn. Lena's grip on his jacket tightened. We've got time. Maybe not much, but enough to figure out a plan. Kieran's phone buzzed. Text from Agent Rivera. Your hour is almost up, Mr. Vale. Where are you? He showed Lena the message. She read it. Her jaw set with determination he recognized from Bright Path, the stubborn refusal to surrender even when logic suggested defeat. We don't go to the FBI, she said. We go on offense. How? We expose Adrian Chen, the same way you exposed Victor Hale. We find evidence of his crimes, and we burn his entire operation to the ground before he can hurt either of us. That takes time we don't have, resources I don't have access to anymore. Then we get creative. Lena pulled out her phone, started typing. Marcus gave me contact information for 3 people before he disappeared. People who owe you favors. People who Adrian hasn't compromised yet. Who? She showed him the list. 3 names. People Kieran had worked with over the years. Not close associates, not inner circle, but professionals who'd benefited from his business and might be willing to help. It wasn't much, but it was something. We have maybe 6 hours before the FBI comes looking for you, Lena said. 6 hours to build a case against Adrian Chen, to find evidence that proves he manufactured the murder-for-hire charge, to create enough leverage that he backs off. That's impossible. Probably. Lena met his eyes. But we're doing it anyway. And for the first time since the federal investigation began, Kieran felt something shift. Not hope exactly, but possibility. The 2 of them. Together. Against impossible odds. It was insane. It was desperate. It was the only choice that didn't end with him in prison and Lana in danger. Okay, he said. Let's do it. Lena smiled, fierce and determined and beautiful. Then let's start making calls. She handed him his phone. And in a storage unit in Red Hook, surrounded by boxes and shadows and the wreckage of everything he'd built, Kieran Vale made the first call that wasn't about control or strategy or self-preservation. It was about trust, about fighting alongside someone instead of fighting alone, about learning, finally, desperately, completely, how to let someone in. The phone rang, someone answered, and the battle for survival began. The first call went to Daniel Reeves, a forensic accountant who'd helped Kieran navigate a tax dispute 4 years ago. Kieran had paid him triple his usual rate and never asked for the favor to be returned. Until now. Reeves answered on the 3rd ring, his voice thick with sleep. Do you know what time it is? I need your help, Kieran said. Tonight, right now. And I need you to do it without asking questions that could put you in legal jeopardy. Silence. Then, how bad is it? Federal investigation, manufactured evidence. 6 hours to find proof that someone's framing me or I'm facing murder-for-hire charges. More silence. Kieran could hear Reeves breathing, calculating risk versus loyalty versus the debt he might still feel. Who am I looking at? Reeves asked finally. Adrian Chen,
I need his financial records. Anything that connects him to the witness claiming I tried to hire them. Anything that shows a pattern of manufacturing evidence against business rivals. That's asking me to hack into records that are probably protected by people who kill accountants for fun. I know. And if I say no, then I thank you for considering it and never contact you again. Reeves was quiet for 10 seconds that felt like hours. Send me what you have, he said. I'll see what I can find. No promises. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. I might not find anything, and if I do, it might not be enough. Kieran hung up, looked at Lena. One down. She nodded. 2 more calls. The second call went to Yuki Tanaka, a private investigator who specialized in surveillance and background checks. She'd done work for Kieran's company 3 years ago, tracking down evidence of corporate espionage. She was expensive, thorough, and had never asked uncomfortable questions about legality. Kieran Vale, she said when she answered. No greeting, just acknowledgement. I heard about your federal troubles. Figured you'd call eventually. I need surveillance footage. Security cameras near Pier 47 from earlier tonight. And any digital footprint showing communications between Adrian Chen and a potential witness against me. That's going to cost you. How much? 50,000, cash, up front. Kieran's accounts were frozen, his liquid assets inaccessible. He had maybe 8,000 in emergency cash hidden at his apartment. I can't pay you up front, he admitted. Yuki laughed. Not cruelly, just recognition of impossible situations. Then I can't help you. Wait! Lena grabbed the phone from Kieran's hand. Miss Tanaka? My name is Lena Hartwell. I run a literacy program called Bright Path. Kieran helped expose a man who was destroying my organization. He sacrificed his empire to do it. He's not asking for your help so he can escape justice. He's asking because someone is manufacturing charges against him. And if you help us prove that, I'll personally make sure every news outlet in the city knows you're the investigator who brought down Adrian Chen. Silence on the other end, then, you're the woman from the news, the community center. Yes. And you're vouching for him? I am. Another pause. Kieran watched Lena's face, the determination there, the fierce certainty. I'll do it for 25,000, Yuki said. Payable when this is over. If you're lying to me, I'll make sure everyone knows that too. Deal, Lena said. She handed the phone back to Kieran. You've got 2 hours, Yuki told him. That's how long it'll take me to access the systems I need. If I find something, I'll call. If I don't, you're on your own. Understood. The third call was the hardest. Kieran stared at the name on his screen. Olivia Cross, federal prosecutor. They'd dated briefly 6 years ago before Kieran's world and her career made continuing impossible. They'd ended things amicably, stayed in occasional contact. She'd sent him a card when his father died, and now he was about to ask her to risk everything. He made the call. Olivia answered immediately. Kieran? Jesus, I was just reading about your case. Are you okay? No, I need help. I can't help you with a federal investigation. That's not just unethical, it's illegal. I'm not asking you to interfere. I'm asking you to look at evidence, independently, and tell me if it's enough to prove someone's framing me. Who? Adrian Chen. Olivia's sharp intake of breath was audible. You're claiming Adrian Chen manufactured evidence against you? Yes. That's a serious accusation. He's connected, protected. You'd need ironclad proof. I'm working on getting it, but when I do, I need someone inside the system who can verify it's legitimate, who can make sure it gets to the right people before I'm arrested. Kieran, if you're wrong about this, I'm not wrong. Adrian threatened me tonight, told me to go to prison quietly or he'd hurt someone I care about. Then the FBI suddenly has a witness claiming I solicited murder. The timing isn't coincidence. Olivia was quiet. Kieran could hear her thinking, weighing her career against their history, against the possibility he was telling the truth. Send me what you find, she said finally. I'll look at it. That's all I'm promising. If it's legitimate, I'll figure out a way to get it into the right hands without compromising either of us. If it's not, you need to turn yourself in and fight this the right way. Fair enough. Kieran? Yeah? Don't make me regret this. He hung up. Looked at Lena. Now we wait, he said. No. Lena shook her head. Now we dig. She pulled a laptop from one of the boxes in the storage unit. Kieran hadn't noticed it before. Hadn't noticed half the equipment stacked on the shelves. Recording devices, cameras, files. Where did all this come from? Marcus dropped it off before he disappeared. Said you'd need it. Lena opened the laptop. He also left notes. Information about Adrian Chen's operation. Weaknesses. People who might be willing to talk. Kieran stared at the laptop screen. At Marcus's detailed notes about Adrian's network. Financial vulnerabilities. Associates who'd been badly treated. People with grudges. Marcus had betrayed him, then tried to make it right, then vanished. Why would he do this? Kieran asked. Because people are complicated, Lena said. Because he spent 3 years being loyal to money and one afternoon remembering what actual loyalty feels like. Because maybe he saw something in what you did for me and wanted to be that person too. She started typing, pulling up files, cross-referencing names. Here, she said, pointing at the screen, 3 people who used to work for Adrian, all of them left under bad circumstances. All of them might have information about how he operates. Kieran looked at the names, recognized 2 of them. They won't talk. Adrian has too much leverage. Then we find the leverage that makes them talk. Lena's fingers flew across the keyboard. Marcus included financial records, payments Adrian made that look suspicious. If we can connect those payments to the witness claiming you tried to hire them, we prove the whole thing is fabricated. Exactly. They worked in silence. Lena navigating through files with surprising efficiency. Kieran making connections between names and dates and transactions. An hour passed. Kieran's phone rang. Daniel Reeves. I found something, Reeves said without preamble. 3 wire transfers from an account linked to Adrian Chen to a man named Thomas Vickers. Dates match up with when Vickers would have been approached to be a witness against you. Total amount, $250,000.
Can you prove the account links to Adrian? Not definitively. It's hidden behind shell companies. But I can trace the money backwards through 6 different entities, and they all connect to businesses Adrian controls. Is that enough for a prosecutor? For opening an investigation? Maybe. For proving Adrian manufactured evidence. You'd need more. You'd need Vickers to admit he was paid to lie. Kieran looked at Lena. We need to find Thomas Vickers.
She was already typing. According to Marcus's notes, Vickers lives in Queens, works as a contractor, has a record, fraud mostly. Adrian's used him before for exactly this kind of thing. We need to get to him before the FBI interview. Lena checked the time. We have 4 hours. That's not enough time to... His phone rang again. Yuki Tanaka. I've got surveillance footage from Pier 47, she said. Shows you entering the warehouse alone. Shows Adrian Chen and his people leaving 30 minutes later. And this is interesting, shows Marcus Webb leaving separately, 10 minutes after Adrian, carrying what looks like a file box. Can you enhance the footage? See what's in the box? Already did. It's files, documents. Looks like he's stealing from Adrian. Marcus had taken something. Evidence, maybe, or insurance. Where did he go? Lost him 3 blocks from the warehouse. But I've got his phone pinging off towers in Brooklyn. Last location was near Prospect Park. Want me to track him? Yes, and find Thomas Vickers. I'm sending you an address. This is going to cost more than $25,000. I'll pay whatever it takes. Kieran hung up, looked at Lena. We need to move. Now. They left the storage unit, got in Kieran's car, drove toward Queens with the city lights streaming past like tracer rounds. Lena was quiet for several blocks. Then, when this is over, if we survive this, we need to talk. About what? About us. About whether there's an us. About what happens when you're not running from federal charges and I'm not helping you prove your innocence. Okay? I'm still angry at you, for lying, for turning me into an experiment, for all of it. I know, but I also know that you changed, that you learned, that the person you are now isn't the same person who created Jace Mercer. She looked at him. I need to know if that change is permanent, if you can actually have a relationship without trying to control every variable. I don't know, Kieran admitted. I've spent 15 years operating one way, learning to operate differently, learning to trust someone, to let them make their own choices, to be vulnerable. That's going to take time. How much time? I don't know that either. Lena absorbed this. At least you're being honest. That's all I have left. They drove in silence. The address Marcus had provided for Thomas Vickers led to a rundown apartment building in Astoria. 4th floor. No elevator. Graffiti in the stairwell that looked like territorial markings. Kieran knocked on the door marked 4C. No answer. He knocked again. Harder. The door opened. A man in his 40s, unshaven, wearing a stained undershirt, looked at them with eyes that calculated threat level immediately. Thomas Vickers? Kieran asked. Who's asking? Kieran Vale. Vickers tried to slam the door. Kieran's foot blocked it. I'm not here to hurt you, Kieran said. I'm here to offer you a deal. I don't make deals with people the FBI is investigating. Adrian Chen paid you to lie about me. $250,000. I can prove it. Vickers' face went pale. I don't know what you're talking about. Yes, you do. And here's the thing. When the FBI figures out you took money to manufacture testimony, you're facing perjury charges. Federal perjury. That's 5 years minimum. You can't prove anything. Daniel Reeves is a forensic accountant who just traced wire transfers from Adrian's shell companies to your bank account. Dates match perfectly with when you were approached to be a witness. Want to bet the FBI can't follow the same trail? Vickers' hand on the door was shaking. Adrian will kill me if I talk. Adrian's going to prison, Lena said. She stepped forward, looked at Vickers with the same fierce determination she'd used at Brightpath. We're taking him down tonight. You can either be the person who helps us or the person who goes down with him. Your choice. Who the hell are you? Someone who's tired of watching powerful men destroy people and get away with it. Vickers looked between them, calculating odds. Survival probabilities. What do you want? He asked finally. A recorded statement, Kieran said. Admitting Adrian paid you to lie. Explaining exactly what he asked you to say and how much he paid. Give us that, and we'll make sure the FBI knows you cooperated. Maybe you get immunity instead of prison. And if Adrian finds out I'm talking to you, he's got bigger problems than you right now. Vickers stood in the doorway for another 10 seconds. Then he stepped back. Come in, but make it fast. Inside, the apartment smelled like cigarettes and desperation. Vickers sat on a sagging couch, while Lena set up a camera from the equipment Marcus had provided. Kieran sat across from him. Start from the beginning. When did Adrian approach you? 6 days ago. Said he needed me to do what I do, lie convincingly. Said you were a problem that needed to be eliminated legally. Offered me $250 to testify that you'd approached me about killing Victor Hale. Did I ever approach you about anything? No, never met you before tonight. Adrian gave me details about your case, told me what to say, how to make it sound believable, even coached me on how to handle cross-examination. Did he tell you why he was doing this? Said you were about to flip on him, cooperate with the FBI. He needed you buried before you could talk. Lena adjusted the camera angle. Did Adrian mention other people he'd done this to? Other false witnesses? Vickers hesitated. Yes or no, Kieran said quietly. This is your chance to do the right thing. 3 others. Over the past 5 years, same setup. Pay someone to lie. Create charges that force people to take plea deals or face impossible defense costs. Names? Vickers gave them. 3 people Kieran didn't recognize. But the pattern was clear. Adrian had been systematically eliminating business rivals and threats using manufactured testimony. That's enough, Lena said. She stopped the recording. Thank you. Vickers looked at Kieran. What happens now? Now you disappear for 48 hours. Don't answer your phone. Don't talk to anyone. We're going to use this recording to bring down Adrian. When it's safe, we'll put you in touch with a prosecutor who can negotiate your immunity. And if it doesn't work, then we're all fucked together. They left Vickers in his apartment, got back in the car. Lena immediately called Olivia Cross. I'm sending you a video file, she said. Watch it, all of it, then call us back. She hung up before Olivia could respond. Kieran drove. No destination, just movement while they waited. His phone rang 20 minutes later. Olivia. Where did you get this? Her voice was tight, controlled. Does it matter? Yes. If this was obtained illegally, it's inadmissible. The witness gave a voluntary statement. We recorded it with his knowledge and consent. No coercion, no illegal surveillance. You're sure? Completely. Olivia was quiet. Kieran could hear papers rustling. This is enough to open an investigation into Adrian Chen. Maybe enough to arrest him. But Kieran, if you're involved in manufacturing this evidence, I'm not. I'm the victim. Adrian tried to frame me to prevent me from cooperating with the FBI. This recording proves it. And the forensic accounting? The wire transfers? Daniel Reeves can testify to those. He's willing to go on record. More silence. I need to make some calls, Olivia said finally. Don't go to the FBI interview. Don't turn yourself in. Give me 2 hours to get this to the right people. If this is legitimate, I can get the charges against you dropped. Maybe even get Adrian arrested before sunrise. And if it's not enough, then you turn yourself in and we fight this the traditional way. But Kieran, her voice softened. This looks real. This looks like you're telling the truth. So for the first time in this whole nightmare, I think you might actually survive. She hung up. Kieran pulled over, parked on a side street in Brooklyn, put his head against the steering wheel. Lena's hand found his shoulder. We did it. Maybe. We don't know yet. We did what we could. We fought back. That's more than most people do. Kieran looked at her. At this woman who'd stood beside him when logic suggested running, who'd fought for him when he'd given her every reason to walk away. Why? He asked. Why did you help me? After everything I did? Lena's eyes were bright in the streetlight coming through the windshield. Because I needed to know if what we had was real. If Jace Mercer was a complete fabrication, or if some part of you was actually that person. The person who sat with me on concrete steps and talked about nothing. Who helped kids with homework without performing generosity. Who caught me when I slipped on ice and looked at me like I mattered. And now you know? Yeah, that person was real. Is real. He's just buried under 15 years of self-protection and control issues and fear. She touched his face. But he's in there. And I think he's worth fighting for. Kieran's throat was tight. I don't deserve you. Probably not. But that's not really the point, is it? We don't get together because we deserve each other. We get together because we choose each other, despite all the reasons not to. I don't know how to do this. How to be in a relationship without controlling it. Then we figure it out together. Make mistakes. Learn. Try again. Lena's voice was steady. I'm not asking for perfection. I'm asking for honesty, for effort, for you to keep trying to be that person on the steps instead of reverting to the billionaire who solves everything with power. What if I can't? Then we don't work, and that'll hurt, but at least we'll have tried. Kieran kissed her, not desperate, not performative, just honest, true. A choice they were both making with clear eyes and full knowledge of how badly this could end. When they pulled apart, Lena was smiling. So what now? She asked. Now we wait 2 hours and hope Olivia can make this work. They waited in the car, talking quietly about nothing important, about Bright Path reopening, about the kids who'd been asking for Kieran, about Lena's plans for expanding the program, about small things instead of life or death stakes, about a future that might actually exist. Kieran's phone rang 90 minutes later. Olivia. Adrian Chen was arrested 20 minutes ago. Federal agents executed warrants on his properties. They're bringing in Thomas Vickers for official testimony. And based on the evidence you provided, the murder-for-hire charges against you have been dropped. Kieran closed his eyes. What about the original investigation? The money laundering charges? Still active. But now that we have evidence Adrian was trying to eliminate you, prosecutors are taking a harder look at the testimony against you. Some of it might be compromised, manufactured by Adrian to remove a business rival. So I'm not clear. Not yet. But you're not being arrested tonight, and you've got time to build a defense. That's more than you had 6 hours ago. Thank you, Olivia. Don't thank me. Thank whoever taught you to fight back instead of just accepting defeat. She paused. And Kieran? The woman who called me earlier, Lena, don't fuck this up. I'll try not to. He hung up, looked at Lena. Adrian's arrested. The murder charges are dropped. The original investigation is still active, but I've got time to fight it. Lena's eyes filled with tears. You're not going to prison. Not tonight, anyway. She kissed him again. Harder this time. Relief and hope, and the beginning of something neither of them had words for yet. When they finally separated, dawn was starting to break over Brooklyn, pink and gold light turning the buildings into silhouettes. What happens now? Lena asked. Now I rebuild, not the empire. Something different, something that doesn't require operating in shadows. And us? Kieran took her hand. Now we try. Honestly, without me controlling everything, without you having to wonder if I'm manipulating the situation. That sounds terrifying. Yeah. And uncertain. Yeah. And nothing like what we had before. No, it'll be real, messy, difficult, probably painful sometimes. Lena smiled. I'll take it. They sat in the car as the city woke up around them, watched morning traffic start to move, delivery trucks making their rounds, people heading to jobs that required them to be somewhere before the sun was fully up. The ordinary machinery of life continuing regardless of whether billionaire empires collapsed or federal investigations resolved or two damaged people found each other in the wreckage. Kieran's phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number. I'm glad you survived. Stay safe. M. Marcus. Wherever he was, whatever he was running from. Kieran didn't respond. Just let the message exist as proof that people were complicated. That betrayal and loyalty could exist in the same person. That redemption was possible even for mercenaries who'd spent years choosing money over morality. We should go, Lena said. I've got kids arriving at the new Bright Path location in 3 hours. I need to be there. Where's the new location? A building in Jersey City. Bigger than the old one, better heating. The landlord is some anonymous donor who bought it and put it in a trust. Kieran said nothing. Lena looked at him. That was you, wasn't it? I don't know what you're talking about. Kieran, I set it up months ago, before everything collapsed, before the investigation, before Victor destroyed the original building. I wanted you to have a backup, a place that couldn't be taken away. That's control. That's insurance. There's a difference. Lena studied his face. Is there? I think so. Control is making decisions for you without asking. Insurance is creating options and letting you choose whether to use them. You could have refused the building, found somewhere else. I wouldn't have interfered. Would you really have let me refuse? Kieran thought about it honestly. 3 months ago? No. I would have found a way to make you take it. But now? He met her eyes. Yeah, I would have hated it, but I would have respected your choice. Lena absorbed this. That's growth. It's a start. Then I accept the building, and I'm choosing to believe you when you say you would have respected my decision either way. That's trust. It's a start. They drove back to Manhattan, dropped Lena at her apartment so she could change before heading to Bright Path. Kieran walked her to the door. Come by later, she said, after the kids leave. We'll talk about what happens next. Okay. And Kieran, don't disappear on me. Don't decide you're protecting me by staying away. Don't make choices about our relationship without actually talking to me. I won't. Promise? I promise. She kissed him once more, then disappeared into her building. Kieran drove to his penthouse, the one he hadn't visited in weeks, walked through the marble entrance, rode the elevator to the top floor, let himself into a space that felt like a museum of someone else's life. The city stretched out beyond the windows, Manhattan in morning light. Still brutal, still beautiful, still indifferent to whether any individual person succeeded or failed. His phone rang. Agent Rivera. Mr. Vale, we need to schedule a new interview. The murder-for-hire charges have been dropped, but we still have questions about your original case. My lawyers will coordinate with you. Understood. And Mr. Vale? For what it's worth, I'm glad the Adrian Chen situation resolved the way it did. Murder charges are ugly. Nobody wins. Thanks. Kieran hung up. Looked around the penthouse, at the wealth that had insulated him from human connection for 15 years, at the empire he'd built that had required operating in moral gray areas, at the life he'd constructed that had left him completely alone, and made a decision. He called his lawyers, instructed them to begin dismantling Vale Consolidated, selling off the parts that operated in shadows, redirecting assets toward legitimate businesses and charitable foundations, creating distance between himself and people like Adrian Chen. It would take years, cost billions, destroy the power base he'd spent his entire adult life building. But maybe that was the point. Maybe real wealth wasn't measured in dollars or influence or the ability to make problems disappear with a phone call. Maybe it was measured in whether you could look at yourself without flinching, whether you could sleep without nightmares, whether someone could love you and mean it instead of performing it. 3 months later, Kieran sat on the steps outside Bright Path's new location, the building Lena had accepted with cautious trust, the place where 23 kids, and now 37, came to learn reading and homework and small everyday braveries. Inside, children's voices echoed through rooms designed for learning instead of profit. Lena moved between groups with practiced efficiency, still exhausted, still running on coffee and hope, but different now, lighter, like something heavy had been lifted. Kieran waited outside with terrible coffee from the bodega and a sandwich that tasted marginally better than cardboard. The door opened. Lena emerged, saw him, smiled. That smile still hit him like the first time. Real, uncalculated, offered freely instead of performed for advantage. She sat beside him, close enough that their shoulders touched. How was today? He asked. Chaotic, beautiful. One kid threw up. Another learned to read the word friendship all by himself and cried about it. Standard Thursday. Sounds perfect. It was. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the Jersey City evening settle around them. Cars passing. People heading home. The ordinary rhythm of lives being lived without drama or federal investigations or billionaire machinations. I talked to my lawyer today, Kieran said. The plea deal came through. 2 years probation. Community service. Fines that'll cost me about $3 billion, but no prison time. That's good. Yeah. How do you feel about it? Kieran thought about the question honestly. Relieved. Grateful. Like I got away with something I shouldn't have. You paid for what you did. Not really. $3 billion is nothing to me. I've got $6 billion left. That's not punishment. That's a transaction. Then what would real punishment look like? I don't know. Maybe there isn't one. Maybe some mistakes are too big to pay for with anything except trying to be different going forward. Lena's hand found his. That sounds like wisdom. Or rationalization. Probably both. They sat. The city darkened around them. Streetlights flickered on in sequence. I've been thinking, Lena said carefully, about us, about what this is. Kieran's chest tightened. Okay. We've been doing this for 3 months now, seeing each other, talking, learning how to be together without you trying to solve all my problems. And it's been good, hard sometimes. You still have moments where you try to control things, and I still have moments where I don't trust your motivations, but it's been good. But? No but. I'm just saying it's been good, that I want to keep doing this, that I think we're figuring it out. Relief flooded through him. Yeah. She squeezed his hand. You're not perfect. You probably never will be. You've got 15 years of bad habits and control issues and using money to solve problems. But you're trying. And that matters. I am trying. I know. I see it. She leaned her head against his shoulder. So let's keep trying together. Inside Bright Path, someone turned on music. Children's laughter mixed with pop songs about friendship and dreams. The chaos of learning happening in real time. Kieran looked at the building, at the program Lena had built from exhausted hope and stubborn determination. At the kids inside who didn't care about empires or federal investigations or how much money someone had in their bank account. They cared about being seen, being valued, being taught that they mattered. Same thing he'd been looking for his entire life. I love you, he said. Simple. True. No performance behind it. Lena lifted her head, looked at him with eyes that saw all of him. The damaged parts, the controlling tendencies, the fear that still lived underneath, and chose him anyway. I love you too, she said, even though you're still kind of an asshole sometimes. Fair. And even though I'm still not entirely sure I can trust you not to revert to billionaire mode and try to solve all my problems. Also fair. But I love you, the real you. The person who sat with me on steps and talked about nothing, who helped kids with homework, who sacrificed his empire to do the right thing even when it cost everything. Kieran kissed her. There on the steps outside Bright Path, with children's music drifting through the windows and the Jersey City evening settling around them, and the future stretching out uncertain and difficult and real. When they pulled apart, Lena was smiling. Come on, she said. There's a kid inside who wants to show you the book he just finished. He's been asking for you all week. Which kid? The one who told you math was stupid, remember? He's reading chapter books now. Says it's because you explained that math helps you know when people are lying. They stood, walked toward the building together, not perfectly aligned, not moving in synchronized steps, just two people choosing to walk in the same direction despite all the reasons not to. Inside, a boy who couldn't have been older than 12 looked up from his book when Kieran entered. His face split into a genuine smile. Mr. Jace, I finished it. Kieran crossed to him, sat down, looked at the book. A story about dragons and knights and choosing bravery even when you're scared. Tell me about it, Kieran said. And for the next 30 minutes, he listened to a kid explain plot and character development with the passionate intensity of someone who just discovered reading was magic. Lena watched from across the room, caught his eye, smiled. This, Kieran thought, this was what being rich actually meant. Not the billions in his account or the buildings with his name on them or the power to make problems disappear. This. A kid who trusted him enough to share a story. A woman who loved him despite knowing exactly who he was. A community that made space for him to be useful instead of just powerful. For a man who'd spent 15 years building an empire that left him completely alone, this felt like finally understanding what wealth was supposed to buy. Not isolation, connection, not control. Trust, not performance. Truth. Outside, the city continued its indifferent machinery. People lived and died and built and destroyed without caring whether Kieran Vale found redemption or happiness or peace. But inside Bright Path, surrounded by children learning to read and a woman who'd chosen to see him clearly and keep choosing him anyway, Kieran finally felt something he'd spent his entire adult life searching for. He felt human, imperfect, damaged, still learning, but human. And for the first time in years, that was enough. The boy finished explaining his book. looked at Kieran expectantly. So, what did you think? He asked. Was it good? Kieran smiled, real, uncalculated. The kind of smile Jace Mercer had worn naturally and Kieran Vale was still learning to access. Yeah, he said. It was good. Tell me what you're reading next. And as the evening settled into night and the children slowly filtered home and Lena locked up the building, Kieran sat on those steps one more time, looking at the city that had almost destroyed him, at the empire he'd dismantled, at the future that was uncertain and difficult and entirely without guarantees, and choosing to build something different. Not an empire this time. A life. Messy. Real. Constructed from honesty instead of control. Built with someone who saw his damage and stayed anyway. Measured in moments that mattered instead of dollars that didn't. Lena sat beside him. Her hand found his. Ready to go home? She asked. Kieran looked at her. At this woman who'd taught him that being overlooked didn't mean being worthless. That fighting back mattered even when you were terrified. That love wasn't a transaction or a test or a performance. It was a choice, made daily, imperfectly, with full knowledge that it might not work but choosing to try anyway. Yeah, he said. I'm ready. They stood together, walked toward whatever came next, not perfectly aligned, not moving in synchronized steps, just two people who'd found each other in the wreckage and decided to build something new from the pieces that remained. And in a city that measured worth in dollars and power and influence, that choice became the only thing that ever truly made Kieran Vale rich.